Imagine you work like a pack mule for over 20 years, but when you finally retire and are ready to enjoy life, you wake up the next day 20 years in the past. Knowing everything that will happen in this world of monsters and awakened beings, you're determined to become the richest and most powerful person in less than 3 years. Our story begins a retirement celebration. He mentioned that his farewell was quite modest, with just a few friends, some drinks, and gifts. But even so, he managed to save 20 years of work, owning several buildings in his name. And now all that was left was to live a comfortable life and travel the world. When he opened his eyes, he realized it wouldn't be that simple. He sat up in bed and noticed he was in a different room. He sighed, understanding that this was the dormitory where he had lived 20 years ago. Looking at his phone, he saw that it was the year 2018. Furious, he threw his phone at the wall, wondering if someone was playing a joke on him. Angry, Diane started shouting, saying they could have sent him back at another time, but decided to return him now. Dissatisfied, he asked himself why they were doing this. Rubbing his head, he wondered what he had done wrong. Convincing himself that he had to endure it, he glanced at the watch on his wrist. He realized it was the watch Zhang Qiu had given him. He remembered his friend telling him that this watch was one of the last relics of the legendary Yahello. Looking at the watch, he wondered if it might be the reason for his return and suspected he might have tampered with it while drunk. Suddenly, someone pounded on the door angrily, demanding to know the reason for the noise and telling him to come out. He remembered that the landlord's son lived next door and behaved like a delinquent. Every night, loud sounds would play non-stop. In the morning, he was always charged a fee for the noise, which he paid without even knowing if he was awake. As the man outside asked if he should break down the door, Diane found it extremely irritating. He opened the door while the thug asked what he was doing. Looking at Diane, the guy asked why he was smiling. The chubby man kept complaining to Diane, who noticed his high-quality clothes and leather jacket. The man started to say he considered reporting him, but didn't want to ruin a young man's future, so he'd accept compensation. He held out his hand, saying it would all be fine if he just handed over his watch. But at that moment, Diane, extremely irritated, looked at the guy's hand. Leaving the thug confused, he slapped his hand away. He prepared to launch an attack on the guy. Before the thug could understand what was happening, Diane simply landed a blow on his face. With blood coming from his nose, he started to fall backward. Quickly, Diane grabbed the guy's face before he hit the ground. With extreme force, he delivered a knee strike to his face. The returner asked the chubby guy why all these lowlifes kept approaching society's newcomers. Stepping away from the thug, he said this wasn't even close to what the guy had made him suffer. Even so, would be enough for now, as he grabbed the chubby guy's clothes. Still on the ground, the man asked if he knew how valuable they were, while Diane said he'd also take his room from now on. He said he didn't understand why he had returned to 2018, but he remembered awakening after falling at a construction site at work. As a kind of blue aura surrounded his body, he said he would try to awaken somewhere. A blue mana coursed through his veins, and Diane remarked that he had been manipulating mana for over 20 years, and that his self-awakening would be no problem. He noted that his body lacked muscle mass and nutrients, but surprisingly, he was handling it well. Spoiling the badass atmosphere, his stomach rumbled, showing he was hungry. Diane began looking for a restaurant near the construction site, but it seemed the restaurant was under renovation. He concluded it was likely because they couldn't easily identify the portals, leading to significant damage. Unexpectedly, his attention was drawn by a desperate scream. People were running in panic as a portal opened, surprising him with such a sudden appearance. There was a red wild dog, a monster with fangs that usually lived in packs. An older man grabbed his shoulder, urging the young man to run as fast as possible. Suddenly, they heard a man calling desperately for his son. As the child pleaded for help, Diane wondered if this was why he had returned. Looking around, he tried to find a weapon he could use. He noticed a crowbar, thinking it would do the job. Holding his tool, he ran toward the screams. Suddenly, he heard an extremely loud scream beside him. There was a little girl surrounded by wild dogs, crying out for her father. One of the dogs lunged at her, trying to attack, but in the blink of an eye, Diane managed to pull the girl by her shirt. Facing the dogs, he told the girl to run to her father. The monster started charging at him, furious. In an instant, he vanished from their sight. Swinging his crowbar, he launched an attack on one of the dogs. Quickly, he struck its head. The dog surprisingly recovered fast and tried to attack Diane again, but skillfully, he struck it from below. Landing a blow under its jaw, the monster felt a powerful impact. He wasn't done yet and gripped his makeshift weapon firmly. He spun his body, trying to throw the monster away. Gathering his strength, he began shouting, pushing himself even harder. After all that effort, Diane finally managed to throw the dog away, shocking the other monsters. Once again, the moment was spoiled by his stomach growling. He realized he was indeed hungry and wondered why the dogs were gathering like this. Surprising some of the monsters, the returner remarked that, come to think of it, these guys looked pretty juicy, and that it might be nice to eat them, since they look plump. Seeing Diane drooling with hunger, the monsters started to feel scared. He said that in the past, he had always enjoyed the taste of their meat when he cooked them. A little irritated, the returner said he should finish this quickly since he was starving. Diane said that although he was young and healthy, his current body didn't compare to the one he had at 40. As one of the dogs tried to attack him from above, he said that in contrast, his knees were very strong. In a flash, Diane was on top of the dog, ready to strike. Unexpectedly, he didn't use his weapon, but instead his leg delivering a powerful kick on top of the dog's head. Landing on the ground, Dayan saw another monster charging at him. The monster tried to bite him, but the returner managed to dodge, noting that a weapon wouldn't be enough. With quick thinking, he used his watch as brass knuckles. He delivered a strong punch to the monster's head. Looking at the still intact watch, Dayan noted how resilient it was. Surveying the area, he noticed about 10 monsters still remaining. To Dayan's surprise, the police arrived, asking citizens to follow instructions. Looking at his new shirt, the returner saw it was all torn up. Still unhappy that it had ripped on its first use, one of the officers approached, calling him a superhuman. The man thanked him for protecting the citizens and asked for his name and affiliation to arrange his rewards. As he introduced himself to the officer as Lim Dayan, he added that he had no affiliation, surprising the officer. A bit awkwardly, he mentioned he hadn't registered as a superhuman yet and that it had only been a few hours since his awakening. Dayan shared his account information, saying he probably wouldn't receive the rewards right away. Then he bid the officer farewell, saying he was in a hurry. The officer called after him, saying he had something to tell him, but Dayan kept running. As he left, Dayan mentally affirmed that his name and contact information should be enough for them to reach him. As soon as the guilds heard about him, they all began searching for him frantically. He was at a restaurant as they served him a creamy soup with meat. Dayan finally began eating. After the first spoonful, he murmured about how delicious it was. Suddenly, his phone vibrated, catching his attention with a call, and he realized it was faster than expected. He explained that this was because everyone was focused on recruiting superhumans. Looking at his phone, he noted that it had already been 2 years since the first gate opened, and that instead of military soldiers, superhumans started operating, giving guilds significant influence. The emergence of a new awakened being led to fierce competition for recruitment. Dayan wondered how exhausting this situation would be. He also remembered that there were many superhuman criminals besides the 6 approaching disasters. With that, he decided he would use all his knowledge and information about the future to retire in 3 years. Dayan stares at his phone, surprised, happy. He realizes that the messages keep coming. But to his shock, someone approaches asking if his name is Lim Dayan. He responds affirmatively, asking who is asking. The man introduces himself as Kim Gil-soo, manager of the Royal Guild. Gil-soo says that after seeing the way Dayan hunted monsters, he would like to sign a contract with him. But someone interrupts the conversation. It's a woman arriving at the restaurant asking if he is Dayan. She asks if he's the man from the monster subjugation video, commenting that he's even more impressive in person. But once again, they're interrupted with someone else claiming to be from the Warrior Guild. As expected, several guild managers show up and start making offers. Dayan starts getting annoyed as his phone won't stop vibrating, surrounded by people trying to win him over. To their surprise, Dayan tells everyone to shut up. Looking at them coldly, he says that if anyone speaks again, he won't join any guild. Facing the representatives, he asks if they should go somewhere else. In a more spacious room, Dayan is seated across from the woman while other managers wait their turn. Sipping his tea, he says he won't drag things out too long. Dayan asks for the highest offer they're willing to make for his entry. The Royal Guild manager explains that the contract prevents him from disclosing the amount, so he'll need to speak with each one individually. Taking a bite of cake, Dayan asks if Gil-soo is the Royal Guild manager, which he confirms. The man starts explaining his guild, but Dayan interrupts again, bidding him goodbye. Gil-soo is completely confused by his words. Dayan recalls that soon the guild will merge with another. Dayan asks the others what they're willing to pay him. The man in the back, shocking Gil-soo, offers 1 billion for his entry. With that, the other representatives start raising their offers, even reaching 1,200,000,000. As everyone offers in high amounts, Dayan wonders to himself what Black Hound could offer him. Suddenly, someone offers 2 billion and promises the best base salary, incentives, and commissions as well. It's the woman sitting across from him, Bak Young-hee, manager of the White House Guild. He recalls that this is a newly formed guild, but it will become one of Korea's top 3 guilds in 10 years. Maybe that's why they're recruiting so aggressively. Dayan tells her to stay, asking the others to leave, but to leave their business cards behind. After everyone leaves, they sit in silence, not saying a word. She says she saw his videos fighting monsters and that he fights skillfully for a newly awakened individual. Dayan notices that she kindly tells him she did some research on his background. As she places an envelope on the table, Young-hee says that either he's a genius or he acquired those skills before awakening. She states that she wants to guide him as the future of White House. Dayan notices that the contract terms are beyond anything he could have imagined in his past life. He asks Young-hee if he can add a few more things. She simply agrees. She's confused as she watches him write without saying anything. She starts laughing, saying Dayan is very funny, but he insists he's not joking. His demands are 4-day work week, guaranteed end times, and the right to refuse long-term missions. Extremely irritated, Young-hee asks if this is some kind of big joke. Coldly, he replies that these are his terms. Looking at him, the manager asks what makes him so confident. Proudly, Dayan says that if they make the deal, she won't be disappointed. Unexpectedly, she stands, slamming her hands on the table. Young-hee says she'll return with a revised contract in a few days. Trying to charm him, she suggests they have a drink instead of coffee next time. He remains indifferent, watching Young-hee leave. Dayan thinks to himself that he shouldn't get involved with her after all. She's the daughter of the guild master. He stands up after deciding he should register as a superhuman. He arrives at the Seoul Disaster Management Branch. In the Superhuman Cooperation Team room, someone informs him that the manager isn't available, and as a newcomer, he can't proceed yet. He tells the receptionist receptionist he's in a hurry and asks if there's another way. She says she'll try calling the manager first. Dayan notes mentally that the guy on the phone is likely the most important one there, so he should move quickly. As she guides him, the receptionist asks if he has any specific abilities. Dayan tells her he only has physical enhancement, nothing special, though this is obviously a lie. Since there are no magic measuring devices yet, they can only learn about abilities if you demonstrate them. She takes him to a room, saying they need to continue with the superhuman test, and asks him to lift the weight. Dayan places his hand on the bar as mana flows through his veins. With just one hand, he lifts the weight effortlessly. The woman, astonished, asks if he's really a superhuman. Dayan asks if he looks like a fake. She hands him a temporary superhuman certificate, and he thanks her. The woman informs him that they'll contact him when the official certificate is ready, and Dayan just thanks her. Someone arrives, asking if Yujin is still there. The receptionist stands up, calling for the team leader. Dayan feels mentally uncomfortable and decides he should leave quietly. As he walks past the man, the newly awakened one identifies him as Ju Sangwook, the head of the cooperation team. As he leaves, Dayan says he probably won't return there. The leader asks the receptionist if that's the new superhuman. She tells him that he's Dayan, the one they discussed on the phone. He realizes that this is the super rookie. Dayan was in the contamination control zone. It's an area abandoned due to monsters. This is where Gaia, a world of magic and swords, will collide with Earth. This will be the only control zone opened in Korea. Extremely pleased, Dayan says that after his first payment, he'll buy this territory. Owning the gate will make him a fortune. As he crouches down, rummaging through his bag, he says he needs to unload all his baggage and then hunt some monsters. Surprisingly, he hears a voice saying that if they don't want to die, they should leave. The voice warns again that if they come closer, they will die. Dayan wonders if this is the language of Gaia. Looking in the direction the sound is coming from, Dayan starts walking towards it as his body becomes transparent. His ability is concealment, allowing him to blend in and hide in the surroundings. This is why in his past life, he was forced into countless reconnaissance, espionage, and assassination missions. As he moves swiftly, he declares that he doesn't plan to go through such hardships again. Still running, Dayan wonders if that voice is being chased by something. It's a little girl surrounded by 3 men, warning him once again. Extremely angry, the girl summons a large fireball in her hands. They're fascinated that she's superhuman, saying it's amazing. However, frightening the child, her magic fades. One of them says they'll sell her for a great price. Dayan recalls that in Gaia, they call abilities superpowers and wonders if this girl is a dimensional refugee. One of the men approaches her, asking her to stop resisting, saying they'll buy her something delicious. Dayan is surprised to see his tattoo. It's the symbol of the criminal faction Red Snake, and he wonders if they're also involved in human trafficking. Dayan remarks that since he's low on mana, he should end his concealment, wondering if he should help the girl. He grips his knife firmly. Unexpectedly for the criminals, he stabs one of them in the heart. Dayan tosses his dagger in the air, catching it again and repositioning it. Without them even realizing what's happening, Dayan slashes the throats of both. The little girl, watching everything, starts trembling, horrified by the sight. With her still trembling, Dayan, a bit awkwardly, clears his throat to get her attention. He asks if she's from Gaia and says he has a few questions. The girl, surprised, asks if he understands her language. But suddenly, as usual, someone's stomach growls. But this time, it's the girl's. With some difficulty, he asks if the little girl likes meat. After eating, the little girl happily thanks him for saving her, promising she will repay the favor. Grumbling, he asks how much she can eat on her own, while she, confused, asks what he means. He changes the subject, asking if she was the only one who managed to cross the dimensional portal. The child hesitates, and Dayan explains further, asking where she was before crossing the portal and where her home is. Head down, the little girl says she can't tell him. He then asks her age, and she says she can't share that either. Dayan wonders why she can't tell him anything, but his thoughts are interrupted as the little girl asks him for help. She says she knows nothing about this place, but despite him being a stranger, she feels he can help her. The girl mentions she can control fire and forms small flames in her hand. A bit disappointed, she adds that she can't manage it very well anyway. Coldly, he tells her he has no time to raise a child and certainly no obligation to take care of her, which makes her sad. But he adds that, in any case, there is only 1 month left and she can stay with him for that time. Dayan tells her he will teach her his language and basic common sense, but in exchange, he will expect her to help with some chores. Smiling, the girl asks if she can really stay, while he mentally admits he's already starting to feel irritated. Suddenly, he hands her a stack of dishes and asks her to wash them. The little girl, excited, introduces herself as Lily and says she will work hard in the future. She asks where she should wash them, and he points her in that direction. Dayan notes to himself that her name sounds familiar. Surprised, he recalls the fire user named Lily, remembering that in 10 years, a red-haired woman will burn half of Seoul, the Fire Witch, one of the 6 calamities. But he convinces himself that Lily only resembles her and certainly isn't the witch. Watching the cheerful child, Dayan comments that she was raised to become a disaster, and that perhaps he has prevented a calamity. As they walk through a market, the little girl asks where they are going. He tells her they are going to the market and will make a special meal today, which makes her extremely excited. Dayan asks the butcher if he has any raptor loin, while Lily gazes at the large amount of meat. He explains that they started selling monster meat due to food shortages. Dayan says that this meat will become a mana-rich nutritional ingredient and that people won't be able to live without it in the future. They leave with an ample amount of meat thanks to the butcher who gave extra to feed the little girl with a rum rumbling stomach. Passing by a store, Dayan says they need to buy clothes for the girl and tells Lily to pick something, making her even happier. She chooses a dress, saying she wants to wear it. Dayan simply watches her choice in silence. After a moment, incredulously, she's now dressed in athletic clothes. Dayan says it would be uncomfortable to wear something like that in the ruins, while Lily remains shocked. Then we see a bubbling pot, and he says that today's special dish is something great to increase their mana. A bit nervous and disgusted, Lily asks if they're really going to eat that. Dayan says it's good for their bodies, so they have to eat it. But she changes her mind when she smells something extremely appetizing. Holding out a tray of chicken, Dayan says that it was supposed to be dessert, but they can eat it now. She takes a drumstick and tastes chicken for the first time. The little girl is delighted to find out it's delicious. She says it's really tasty and wants to eat only that from now on. Extremely annoyed, he asks Lily if she shouldn't mix everything together since she'll be eating both. The little girl pleads that it's not necessary. Dayan concedes that he too is picky with food, but in any case, the soup isn't so bad that he can't eat it. Irritated, he mentally confesses that if he had regressed, he'd be eating at a high-end restaurant right now. Lily complains that her tongue feels numb, but Dayan scolds her to stop whining after eating everything. He stands up, saying he'll be busy, and tells the little girl to wash the dishes and not to disturb him. Dayan sits down and begins to meditate. He says he's practicing the Great Heart of the Sea technique, which enhances resilience and allows for more flexible mana use. He recalls that in his previous life, he used to train every time he returned to Earth. Dayan admits that he practiced this technique consistently, but his progress was never as good as it is now. With a smile, he notes that if he continues eating mana-rich foods and practicing, he might become stronger than before. Unexpectedly for Lily, who was watching him, Dayan opens his eyes, saying his stomach is already rumbling. Excitedly, the little girl asks if he's hungry and if he wants some chicken. A bit embarrassed, he realizes she was watching him the whole time. Finally, they're eating the mana-enriched food while she screams that she hates it, and he silently agrees. After 2 days pass, his mana has clearly increased. He notes that at this pace, he'll be able to hunt for treasures soon. Yumdi calls Dayan, asking if he planned to contact her and if he wasn't worried about her well-being. Mentally, he admits he completely forgot about the guild, asking her if the contract was properly revised. She hesitates before answering, which makes Dayan assume there's a problem. Yumi says she managed to convince the CEO, but he requested a trial test. She says she'll find another way if he waits a bit longer, but Dayan agrees to the test under certain conditions. At the White House Guild headquarters, someone comments on how cute the little girl is. Dayan introduces Lily to Youngie, saying she's his younger half-sister. He explains that Lily grew up abroad and doesn't speak Korean well, so she'll stay with him for now. The child asks who Youngie is, calling her pretty, but Dayan only says she's someone who gives them money. Lily interprets that money means chicken and calls Youngie a good person. Youngie informs him that her guild doesn't interfere in superhumans' private lives. A man welcomes him to the White House Guild, introducing himself as the representative, Bak Chang-soo. As they shake hands, he apologizes for the inconvenience, but says this is an important procedure. Dayan says it's no problem. The man informs him that if he passes the test, his initial payment will be doubled and asks if Dayan agrees. Unleashing his golden mana, he asks if Dayan is really worth it while staring at him intensely. The Awakened One mentally admits that only a true monster could apply such intense pressure using just his mana. He states that he's not the same as before, summoning his blue mana, even surprising Lily. With a smile, he forms a mana shield around himself, saying he will prove his worth. The man is greatly surprised to see this. Turning to the manager, he asks for the contract to be rewritten. Shocked, she says the contract they agreed on was already revised. But he says they should triple the initial amount, and if he passes all tests, they should add another 20 billion won. Dayan notes that if he passes all the tests, his initial payment will be 26 billion. In the guild's training center, the man informs him that the test will be a one-on-one combat against 3 guild members. Since this is only a test, he should be careful not to get hurt. The man introduces him to the first challenger, Wang Jang-hook, a member of the guild's first division. The manager asks him what weapon he'd like, but Dayan calmly says a watch is enough, leaving his opponent very irritated. He notes that it hasn't been long since Dayan awakened, yet he's already so arrogant. Chang-Su then gives the signal to start, and Dayan says he'll let him go first. Holding his sword, Jang-hook says he'll help him find God. Dayan, not understanding, wonders what's wrong with this guy. He recalls hearing about Jang's acceleration ability, which gradually increases his speed as long as he keeps moving. And because of that, he must win before his opponent gets too fast. Jang quickly begins running around Dayan as if generating a tornado. Dayan admits he anticipated the attack immediately, though it's unexpected. Some people watching from above comment on how extreme their colleague's speed is, saying it'd be impossible to beat him. The guild manager feels a bit nervous, while the representative remains calm. His opponent starts laughing, saying he'll end it right now. He appears behind Dayan, preparing to strike, but unexpectedly, Dayan senses his presence and turns around. Dayan punches him with the watch on his hand, saying those who let down their guard are easier to handle. Watching his opponent fall to the ground, he mentally acknowledges that he was prepared to take damage if he couldn't strike. Lily cheers, saying he won, while the manager looks surprised. Proudly smiling, Dayan asks who's next. The guild representative approaches him, saying that it was amazing, but Dayan asks if his opponent is alright. The man informs him that his opponent doesn't appear to be in any life-threatening danger and should recover after a few days of rest. Smiling, he says that it's all thanks to Dayan. Dayan asks if he's serious, while mentally confessing that if he hadn't controlled his strength, his opponent's head would have exploded. Looking up, he notices a few people watching him, also realizing that he has already fulfilled the requirements to join the guild. With a grin, he thinks he should enjoy the rest of the test, leaving everyone surprised by his reaction. The little girl, somewhat scared, asks why he suddenly looks like a pervert, which makes Dayan annoyed. In another training area, Youngie explains that the White House's first division consists of 6 teams of 5 members each. With that, she announces that his next opponent will be the leader of the 6th team in the first division. Dayan remembers that this was one of the guild officials who quietly observed his last battle. Ignoring his attempt at a greeting, Dayan raises his guard, saying he's ready. A bit awkwardly, the official says he's ready too as he draws his sword. The bell signaling the start of the battle rings. Dayan dashes toward his opponent. Preparing to strike, Dayan positions himself to land a punch with the watch in his hand. With a certain ease, Yang manages to block his attack with a shield. Attempting to counter, the official swings his sword in a blow, but Dayan manages to dodge. Convinced, the team leader assumes this is his chance and grips his shield firmly. He tries to strike him with the shield. Unexpectedly, Dayan manages to dodge while making a hand gesture. Using 3 fingers, he strikes with a move called the Eagle Claw Fist. Defending against his attack, the official asks if he learned martial arts before awakening. Again, attempting to counterattack, the man swings his sword in a blow. However, Dayan ducks, dodging the attack once more. He stops mid-motion, surprising his opponent. Throwing his body backward, he delivers another blow called the Slanted Iron Mountain. Yang is even more surprised as he looks back. The impact of the attack was so strong that the man was sent flying. Looking at his opponent, Dayan feels a bit nervous. The official, extremely angry, admits that he really is very strong, while the frightening aura emanates from his body. Looking at Yang, Dayan says he tried to hide his strength until the last test, but apparently he'll have to finish everything as quickly as possible. Remembering the guild representative, Dayan wonders if that scary old man wants him to show everything he's got. Touching his shield, the official says he wants him on his team, thinking they'd make great partners. Dayan, a bit annoyed, asks who decides that. Looking at the manager, the official asks if the winner couldn't decide that. The old man simply nods affirmatively. Dayan calls out to the manager, saying that if he wins, he wants the position of team leader. The officials watching the battle start to discuss whether that would be unrealistic or too high a bet. He says he wants to be a team leader and will recruit the members himself. They'll also handle missions on their own. Mentally, he assumes he wanted to get these things slowly, but by defeating a team leader, he won't need to. The representative with a serious expression agrees. Looking at Dayan, the old man says that if he loses, he'll have his entry fee and double the contract period. Dayan accepts without a second thought, leaving the official confused, wondering if he really thinks he can beat him. With an insane look, Young says that Youngie likes him and only sent him away because she's interested in him. Dayan remembers that he'll cause a great commotion in the future and will be expelled from the guild, so he asks the official to go clean his room. Young, irritated, starts to say he's not a pervert, telling him to shut up. The official activates his barbarian mode, granting him a physical boost, while he says he'll teach Dayan the true strength of a leader. The man lunges at Dayan. Gripping the watch firmly, he uses the deep sea technique. He uses the punishment fist, telling his opponent to block it. Dayan lands a direct hit to his opponent's stomach, causing several trees to fall behind him from the impact. Both the representative and the manager look at the scene in shock. While Young, with his broken shield on the ground, everyone asks if the newcomer really managed to beat him. Sitting on the ground, Dayan assumes that making money is very tiring and stressful. With his arm trembling, he concludes that his body is still very weak and all of his strength was drained in a single strike. He begins to meditate in the middle of the training field, preparing for the next battle. But Dayan soon opens his eyes, realizing someone is approaching. It was the manager congratulating him and calling him the leader of the 7th team. Smiling, he tells her that it's good to hear that. Standing up, Dayan concludes that he already has 10 billion guaranteed according to the contract, but it might be good to look the 20 billion. Looking at the manager, he asks who his next opponent is, while the little girl asks if he's really going to fight again. The guild representative says it will be him, and that he honestly expected the team leader to win. The manager says excitedly that for the next test, he has no choice but to conduct it himself. Both Dayan and the manager look at Chang-Su in confusion, with Dayan mentally concluding that he won't win against this monster. Dayan coldly says he will forfeit the 3rd test, leaving the representative extremely indignant and disappointed. Chang-Su tries to convince him, saying that if he can hold him off for 3 minutes, he'll give him 30 billion, but Dae-in insists that he can't. Concerned about the guild's financial situation, the manager says they need to close the contract, leaving the representative a bit embarrassed. The contract states that a 10 billion bonus for victories was allocated to the leader of the 7th team, Lim Dae-in. The manager asks Dae-in if he realizes these are particularly good conditions, and he says he's excited to work. Yami asks him where his team is, and Dae-in says he will recruit each member himself, but he would like to make one now. The manager says that's possible, but asks who it would be. He says it's a talented person not tied to any guild. He calls out the little girl's name, leaving her confused. She looks at him, asking if he's really calling her, and Dae-in tells the child to make the biggest fireball she can. She sighs deeply, saying she's still hungry. He says they'll give her 3 whole chickens. Lily runs to the center of the room, saying that's a promise. The little girl starts summoning a large fireball above her head, shouting that she's getting 3 chickens. Surprised, the manager asks if his half-sister is also superhuman, and he confirms, saying he intends to have her on his team. Dae-in says she can manipulate fire in a way that causes no harm around her, and that she learned it in just a few days. He starts discussing Lily's entry bonus and suggests they start with 3 billion. The little girl, with a frightening look, asks where her chickens are. He hands her the chickens, and it's announced that the signing bonus for Team 7's Lily was 50 billion. Yanni informs him that the entire building belongs to the guild, offering training centers, private accommodations, and command centers. As they walk down the hallway, the manager asks Dae-in if the facilities aren't impressive. Entering an armory, Dae-in admits that this is actually a bit impressive. She adds that if he wants a specific weapon, they can make it within a week, and he says he'll take some temporary items. Dae-in concludes that this will be enough to use for a while, and that for now, he'll only use these 2 daggers. He asks if they've seen everything necessary. She says that since it's his first day, they can conclude the tour for now, but suddenly Chang Su starts calling Dae-in. He informs him there's a message from the command center. He says that all teams are currently out in the field, and that even though it's his first day, they'd like to request his help. A bit disheartened, he mentally assumes that he expected to go home early on his first day. The man says that if it weren't for the urgency of the situation, they could even play a game, but Dae-in nervously asks where he should go. Upon arriving at the location, Dae-in asks about the situation and is informed that a horde of giant snail monsters is emerging from a portal. Around them, several awakened fighters try to battle the monsters, but they're caught in the slime spat out by the creatures. Dae-in says it's a complete mess, but that even so, most of the monsters seem under control. He receives orders to capture 3 of them intact for examination, and he agrees while Lily complains about the smell. He explains that the monsters themselves are extremely weak, but when hit hard, they release a terrible odor. Feeling the stench, the little girl asks if she really has to fight these things. Dae-in tells her he blocked his sense of smell with mana. She asks him to teach her the technique, and he explains that it may not work immediately, but with continuous effort. To his surprise, she says it worked, and that she no longer smells anything, while he feels proud of her talent. Looking around, he notices that no one has managed to capture a sample since the monsters explode. As he runs toward the monsters, he says he needs to try capturing one now. While running, he notices a small snail climbing up a tree. Dae-in heads toward the tree and kicks it, so the monster falls. The creature tumbles down in his direction, trying to attack him. He positions himself, and the palms of his hands begin to glow blue. He uses the Tavik technique, throwing the monster backward. Dizzy from the whirlpool effect, the monster falls to the ground, unable to understand what happened. With the creature completely defenseless, Dae-in approaches. Watching him, Lily starts begging him to teach her this technique too. Coolly, he says that if she wants it, she'll have to pay 100 billion. Shocked, she asks how many chickens make up 100 billion. He informs the command center that they collected the samples and will hand them to the collection team before leaving. She asks if he's nervous or needs to discuss anything since it's his first mission, but he calmly replies that he doesn't. Suddenly, someone asks if he's part of White House. The man approaches with his companions, saying he's never seen him before. Dae-in hides Lily behind him. He mentions that he heard White House recruited a new awakened one and promoted him to team leader. This man is the leader of Team 5 of Black Hound, and he asks if the technique Dae-in used before is one of his specialties. Dae-in recalls that this was Jang Hyun, his boss in his previous life. He asks if Hyun has a problem. He explains that the snails are exploding everywhere, making it impossible for them to collect an adequate sample. Dae-in asks what he means by that. The man, growing increasingly irritated, asks how old Dae-in is to not understand his words. Other members from different guilds approach, suggesting they all share information to move forward together. The White House manager advises Dae-in to refuse and file a formal complaint with the guild later. Looking at everyone, he says he's witnessed this many times before, and that if he doesn't let it go, they'll attack everyone from his guild. He throws the bag with the monsters and tells them to take it, while the manager yells his name. He admits that he knew this would happen from the start, but suddenly, he begins walking around the bag. He says they can have it if they get past him. All the members of the rival guilds look at him extremely irritated by his actions. His former boss takes the lead, saying it seems like that's what he wants. Dae-in whispers to Lily that as soon as he signals, she should set the area on fire to confuse them. The girl, with a chilling look, asks if he really wants to burn everyone. He says no, after all, killing them could complicate things, and she should just set fire around the area. Hyung tells Dae-in to get up, calling it a re-education from a senior. Unexpectedly, to everyone's surprise, the portal starts to grow larger, emitting red light lightning. With that, a giant snail begins to emerge. They turn their attention to the monster, saying it's huge and that they need to prepare for battle. Everyone leaves Daen behind as they run toward the monster. The snail is extraordinarily large with multiple tentacles. One of the awakened ones tells Daen not to get involved as they could accidentally hit him and won't take responsibility. He says he understands while grabbing the bag with the monsters. Daen tells the little girl they should take this to the car and come back, and she just nods. As they attack the creature's tentacles, which also counterattacks, they ask why it doesn't retreat and what kind of power this is. One of the awakened fighters is captured by the snail while his comrade shouts for them to cut the tentacles. The White House manager tells the team leader that he must return and fight. She says he needs to land at least one blow to claim the loot. Smiling, he assures her not to worry. Looking back, he says that with their current power, they can't handle the monster. Someone shouts for the tanks to handle the tentacles around them first, but someone else yells that their shields are melting. Daen's former boss tells the tanks to move back and prepare a long-range attack. They start to run while he shouts that this creature is entirely different from the smaller ones. Daen and the little girl just observe, with him saying that they'll only get involved once everyone else falls. While the man runs with his arm petrified, someone else yells at him, urging him to hurry. The man, a member of Black Hound, apologizes to everyone as he runs. Some awakened ones notice that their weapons are melting and that the monster keeps growing larger by the moment. Someone screams for everyone to get away from the monster as it attacks the awakened ones. The man with the petrified arm begs for someone to take him along. Once again, he's yelled at, told to escape on his own. A tentacle from the snail grabs him. As the snail draws him toward its mouth, he screams for help. Suddenly, someone cuts the tentacle, telling him that people like them aren't comrades. It was Daen who saved him, and the man thanks him. Looking at the man on the ground, Daen remarks that that's not how he should be using his attributes. Daen tells him that if he wants to learn the correct way to use them, he should seek him out later. He then tells Lily that they should get started, which makes the girl excited. Suddenly, a massive fire ignites, leaving everyone nearby shocked and unsure of what caused it. The guild manager warns him not to be reckless and says the support team will arrive in 5 minutes. He says it would be better if their guild could monopolize the fight. After all, another guild might arrive in 5 minutes. Someone reports that entering the area is impossible due to the fire and orders all drones to return. Yummy shouts at him, saying it's too dangerous and that monopolizing it isn't that important. Daen reassures her that she doesn't need to worry, but Yummy insists that if he returns injured, there will be consequences. He explains that this monster is an anomaly with a separate entry in the encyclopedia. To prepare for unexpected situations, he memorized all the strategies. Daen mentions that the monster is vulnerable to heat, and its movements will slow down as the area is set on fire. He leaps toward the monster, telling Lily to stay safe. He explains that the monster's tentacles regenerate quickly, so he'll need the girl's help. He circles the giant snail, slicing its tentacles as he goes. Following Daen's instructions, Lily sets fire to the severed tentacles. As a result, she manages to ignite all the burnt tentacles, causing pain to the monster. He praises her, and she feels incredibly proud. After a while, many tentacles have already been severed. Daen recalls that once all the monster's tentacles are cut off, it will hide inside its shell to heal. As the encyclopedia described, the entrance to its shell is now blocked. Holding a type of spike in his hand, he says it's time to use what they brought in the car. Daen explains that the snail's shell is extremely tough, so they'll break it from the outside at its weakest point. Imbuing the large spike with mana, he begins positioning it. With great strength, he starts hammering it in with his dagger. Now the little girl watches everything, feeling extremely bored. Outside, the other awakened ones wonder what's happening behind the fire. The man who could petrify his body recalls Daen's words, suggesting that there's a better way to use his attributes. Daen sighs, extremely tired. Finally, he has managed to drive in all the spikes. He says that after positioning them all, they should strike the shell's center with their strongest possible blow. With that, he launches himself toward the shell, channeling mana throughout his body. He uses a technique called Ocean Martial Arts, Thunder Fist. He lands a powerful strike, releasing waves of mana around him. Even he feels the impact of his own attack. All the spikes begin connecting through the blue lightning. In a flash, the entire shell shatters, exposing the monster inside. However, his attack was so powerful that his arm is now completely injured, causing Daen immense pain. He notes that in testing, it seemed that using this technique more than twice a day was too much. Now his body is so weakened that he can't properly use his martial arts. Lily starts kicking him, asking if he's paralyzed. In pain, Daen tells her she should help him in situations like this. He says at least they managed to defeat the monster. The little girl asks if she should lower the fire wall, but he says no. Daen begins collecting pieces of the monster's tentacles, saying they're very nutritious and tender. Lily imagines they're like snail drumsticks, but Daen explains that this is a perfect ingredient for mana nourishment. While Daen finishes gathering the meat, the leader of Team 2 approaches, saying he heard about the situation and wants to help. Desperately, Daen tells him to wait and says he'll extinguish the fire first. Then he can come in. Daen searches frantically for the one thing he'd missed while the Team 2 leader urges him not to overdo it. Grabbing the last piece, he tells Lily to put out the fire. She opens a path through the flames, leaving all the awakened ones astonished by the sight. The man approaches him, asking if Daen really defeated the monster alone. He replies that it was a fierce fight, but he was lucky to win. All the other awakened ones who had troubled him earlier wonder how he managed to do what even all of them together couldn't. Putting a hand on his shoulder, Daen asks the leader of Team 2 to handle a clean up. The man agrees and tells him to go home. The manager, extremely annoyed, tells him that if his injuries are serious, he should go to the guild for treatment, which leaves him a bit nervous. Lily, looking irritated, says she's tired and hungry, and Dayan agrees, saying she worked very hard today. Handing her various delicious dishes, Dayan tells her they can eat as much as they want, making the little girl very happy. Extremely excited, Lily raises her arms, saying she'll catch another snail. After drinking some beer, Dayan slams his glass on the table, cursing, saying this is what they call tasty. Not fully understanding, Lily wonders if she's supposed to curse every time she eats something. Suddenly, to Dayan's surprise, Lily shouts a curse word. Wiping his mouth, Dayan tells the child that it's a bad word, and she asks why he uses it. Then, after a while, they were once again in the ruins. Dayan meditated while reflecting on how he felt after using the ocean martial art technique. He said he felt dead, but it was obviously because he had worked so hard and even drank alcohol. While grabbing his phone to check how many calls he had received, he mentioned that it was an emergency technique, and that you shouldn't overuse it. Answering the call, the manager began to yell at him, asking why he hadn't answered before. He told her that he had felt intense pain and needed to rest as he had worked a lot the previous day. Awkwardly, she apologized and asked if he was okay. Dayan said he was feeling better and asked for what happened. Yami informed him that she was trying to officially form Team 7 and wanted his opinion. She explained that she needed many members to form a team. A filming team, a support equipment team, a medical team, an operator to report to the control room, and a secretary. He mentally acknowledged that the success of the team depended on good members and told the manager she should assign a few people. Dayan praised her for having a good eye for talented people, which left her a little surprised. Yami said she understood since it was her who recruited him. While she tried to invite him out, Dayan interrupted her, saying he wanted to recruit a superhuman. He told her he wanted Wang Guho and that she should get in touch with him. The representative told him he should take a 3-day break. Dayan said it was fine, but Chang Su informed him that it would be best if he completed the mission after all the team members were assigned. Dayan noted that a few days of rest would do him good. The representative told him to rest as he was the future of the guild. The representative began inviting him to play a game, but Dayan changed the subject by asking if Lily was hungry, and then he hung up. Excited, she asked if they were going to eat chicken, but he, with a sinister smile, said he would make something tastier than chicken. He explained that unlike last time, they now had fresh ingredients and even the soft meat of a snail, including the internal core. He made a soup that seemed to come straight from the underworld, saying it might taste strange now, but he had put many good things in it. Extremely disappointed, Lily said she had eaten too much chicken and was still full. Dayan, smiling, said she could do whatever she wanted. He began eating, saying it was marvelous, and that there might not be any left by dinner, leaving Lily extremely curious. When Dayan grabbed the pot to eat more, Lily interrupted, saying she would eat it all. After taking her first spoonful and realizing it tasted horrible, Dayan reminded her that she said she would eat everything. After finishing, the little girl was extremely sad, saying she was so happy yesterday, but Dayan told her he would make more delicious things. Angry, she said she no longer believed him, but Dayan told her there would be pork belly for dinner, explaining that it was more expensive than chicken. Fixing herself in her chair, she said eating it could make life more enjoyable. Dayan wondered where she had learned such things. He said they needed to digest before eating anything else, and that they would go on a treasure hunt, making Lily excited again. Dayan explained that the monsters who survived the first portal were living in their own territories. One of these territories was a village infested with orcs. There, they kept several artifacts from another dimension. Looking at the village, he said he hadn't obtained it in his past life, but in this one, he would take what was inside the statue. Dayan noticed that there were about 200 orcs, and even though his body had recovered, it would still be too many to fight. He explained that he would enter stealthily, and that Lily should set the fire as soon as she saw his signal, leaving the girl confused, not understanding what signal that would be. Dayan said that after he entered, if a torch fell, she should set the fire at the entrance, but not too big so it wouldn't affect the statue. Dayan used his stealth ability to enter the village. While he entered, Lily watched from above. As he passed the guards, Dayan wondered if there was anyone strong enough to see him. He noticed that about 10 orcs were guarding the statue. As he grabbed his dagger, he said he could do this alone. He wielded his blade, eyeing the opponents, but his attention was drawn by a mutated orc chief. He realized that this was the orc that had shown ridiculous strength in the previous attack. Dayan picked up a stone from the ground, deciding it was better to stick with the plan. He then threw the stone at one of the torches, causing it to fall. Lily, watching, realized that this was the signal Dayan had told her about. Surprising the guards, she began to increase the fire of the torches. The mutated orc ordered that all of them go to the entrance. Dayan said that now he only needed to break the statue and get what he needed. Unexpectedly, a purple aura appeared. It was the mutated orc who was right behind Dayan. Without even looking back, Dayan decided that he couldn't fight him since he was too strong and that he should just flee. He passed through the entrance as the little girl covered it with fire. Dayan admitted that it wasn't worth trying to be discreet once he had been seen. Surprised, Lily asked if he was exposed, to which Dayan replied affirmatively and told her to run. The monsters kept talking in the forest, searching for them. Lily and Dayan were sitting in the middle of a forest. Dayan wondered why it was so difficult when this should have been the easiest place. But suddenly, Lily said she recognized this place. She pointed to a cave, saying she had come out of it after crossing the portal. The little girl explained that those strange uncles had also been there trying to catch her. He wondered if the Red Snake faction had a hideout hideout near a monster-filled area. Dayan began to pet her head, mentally affirming that if this worked, it would be beneficial. With a smile, he asked if they should check it out. She, a little frightened, asked if they needed to go in and said she didn't want to. Dayan handed her a radio communicator, telling her to stay hidden and to alert him if anything happened. He began entering the cave quietly. While walking, he activated his stealth ability again. Dayan passed by an armed soldier, thinking this organization wasn't so small. He noticed that the security seemed to be secret and wondered why they set up an outpost next to an orc village. Entering a bit further, he noticed people working and wondered what they were doing. He noticed one of the men holding a package with a white powder. He wondered if this could be something called serpent. He explains that this is a drug made from plants from another world. Its addictive power has caused the death or disability of countless people. The police have been investigating for a long time but have never found the origin, and apparently it's here. He notices that one package weighs about 50 kilograms, and while there's no certainty, it's possible that there are hundreds of billions in there. Someone was arguing with a soldier, scolding him for not meeting the quota. The boss says he ordered the soldier to recruit tools as quickly as possible, while the soldier apologized. Suddenly, some members of the Red Snake are surprised by something. Everyone is confused by the fact that an entire shipment of drugs has disappeared, while Dan passes by them using his skill. Outside, Dayan asks where the child is. She steps out of a bush and asks if it's over. He says they're just getting started and tells her they're going to play hide and seek. She enters the place where he was hiding the drugs, and he warns her that if she keeps hesitating, she'll lose the game. The soldier exits the cave, saying that he has found them, while Dayan tells Lily that she needs to show her abilities. With that, he looks back and says he'll take care of everything. The soldiers begin shooting in their direction, but Dayan is able to dodge, creating some distance. As he dodges the bullets, Dayan thinks they shoot well, while the soldier wonders why he isn't getting hit. Dayan curses them as he stops in front of the monsters. With a smile, he says there's something strange here. Suddenly, all the orcs start screaming as they look at the soldiers. They begin trembling as they stare directly at the monsters. He says that enough is enough and that Lily can come out now. Dayan plants himself firmly on the ground. He throws the drugs toward the monsters. All the members of the Red Snake look at him, asking what he's doing. The confused monsters look at the box coming toward them. It falls in front of one of them, who gets curious. One of the soldiers asks his superior what they should do. Extremely angry, he tells them to finish off everyone. Dayan activates his skill again, disappearing from the battlefield as the soldiers shoot at the monsters. Suddenly, a large paw slams into the ground with a loud thud. It was the mutant orc who was able to stop all the bullets with his body. The superior orders that everyone focus on the one with white hair first, but the orc easily kills one of them. The little girl asks him when everything will end since she's already hungry. Dayan says that things don't always go as smoothly. Looking at the situation, Dayan says that apparently he's almost done and wonders if he should start cleaning up now. One of the soldiers is lying on the ground begging for help. The large mutant orc cuts him in half, yelling and raising his sword, but suddenly he grunts in pain. Dayan had pierced his chest while praising the monster for doing a good job cleaning up all the trash. The mutant orc falls to his knees on the ground while Dayan pulls the blade out of his chest. The other orcs tremble as Dayan says that after taking down the boss, the rest isn't much of a problem. He mentally assumes that it won't take long for them to be destroyed, while the orcs run away in desperation. After a while, Dayan is already in the village, breaking the statue. He finally manages to open its chest and places his hand inside. He retrieves the Guardian's bracelets, which have a special ability that, when consuming mana, summons a protective barrier. Putting the bracelet on his wrist, he notices that it lives up to its name, even restoring the mana he just used. Lily asks if this is the treasure, which Dayan confirms, and he asks her to come over to him. Dayan places the bracelet on the child's wrist. She's surprised, wondering why he's doing this. He explains that it's a bracelet that grants magical protection. The little girl asks if that's true and notices it's the same as the one he's wearing. While taking the chief's leather to use as a shield, Dayan says they'll eat later, but for now, he needs to go back to the cave. The little girl asks why he's going there again. Dayan says he'll tell her later, but right now, he needs Lily to burn everything. She asks if they're going to eat, and he says no, but the food will taste better. Hearing this, she gets motivated and begins summoning a fireball. Throwing her attack, Lily burns the entire orc village. She burns everything while shouting that she's hungry and wants something delicious. Looking at the girl's power, Dayan realizes he'd be in danger if he left her without food. The soldiers begin shooting, saying that the intruder was here. Dayan summons his magical barrier, telling Lily to watch closely, since her bracelet has the same ability. He explains that if she gets used to it, she can change the shape of the shield, while the little girl summons one as well. Lily says she can just use it to attack her enemies while crushing the soldiers on the ground. Dayan is even more impressed for such talent. While she plays with her shield power, one of the guards apologizes, saying he'll tell them everything he knows about the organization. With a dark look and smile, Dayan says he doesn't need that and asks if this is where the vault is. After an hour, they leave the cave while it explodes behind them. Smiling, Dayan says that, as expected from a secret hideout, there was a lot of money, and now he has many uses for all of it. He tells Lily that she can take off the shield after the explosion is over. She asks, confused, what would happen if they escaped. Dayan then explains that only 35 people are left, and they have nowhere to go. They're just desperate to live their way. Calling one of them Steamed, he orders him to follow him, leaving the man confused. The man keeps asking why he's being called Steamed. Dayan says that apparently the man likes steamed, so that's why he calls him that, and tells him to follow the little girl to her tent. He orders everyone to present themselves at the police station while they wonder if they'll be freed. With a deadly look, Dayan says that if they don't understand, he'll beat them until they do. Afraid, they all say they'll surrender. At the police station, the officers begin asking what they know about the control area and the manipulation of plants. Dayan tells them to go to the police station and make a statement mentioning him and Lily. Dayan concludes that in this life, Kim must have some connection to him. Leaving the place, he says that anyway, Lily worked hard today and he should buy something delicious for her. She was with the former Red Snake member while throwing a tantrum, saying she was hungry. Frightened by the child, he says he doesn't understand what she's saying. Angry, the little girl says that Dayan promised something better than chicken. He hands the bag to Lily, saying it's this, noticing that it's soft. She asks if it's not snail again. Dayan asks the man to make a steamed rice cake, and Steamed just agrees and starts making it. He begins the recipe by placing 2 slices of well-cooked pork belly with roasted garlic and chopped green onions. Then he wraps it in perilla and lettuce leaves, asking them to eat it all in one bite. Dayan was about to tell the little girl to eat everything before it gets cold, but Lily had already eaten and was fascinated, saying that it was really good. While not returning to his work, Dayan buys the land around his tent. Returning to his tent, Dayan, lying in a hammock, admits that he's getting tired of this, leaving his new subordinate hopeful. He begins to say that he has been working hard on building a wooden cabin and that his brother should trust him. Steam shares that he worked as a mason for 3 years, as a cleaner for 2, and as a cook for 3. Dayan says that they lived well for 3 years, while Lily compliments him, saying his rice cakes are great. Dayan thinks that now the former Red Snake member is a hostage because of his rice cakes. Since he doesn't know martial arts, he can't escape. Dayan thinks that Steamed will serve him for the next 3 years until he retires, and after that, he'll give him a big rest. The manager shares that she will take on the role of secretary from the 7th team since they are new and need someone who knows the guild well. Dayan asks if it's really temporary and if someone will come after her. She laughs and says yes, and that she's too busy to do this for long. She hands over a large document, saying that he should familiarize himself with its contents. He admits he should have stayed on break. It was a mission to destroy a portal. Dan asks if he can refuse missions like this. After all, it's in the contract. Yanni explains that it's a mission requested by the government and that other guilds are participating, which will take about 2 days. Dan explains that there are 2 types of portals, Type A, which generates monsters, and after you destroy all of them, it disappears on its own, and Type B, which doesn't disappear after monsters are generated or even if no monsters are generated when open. In this case, you need to enter the portal, destroy the monsters, and destroy the core. Noticing the pictures, he realizes that this place is familiar to him. He realizes this is one of the worst dungeons after the first portal, the Labyrinth of Corrupted Souls. Dayan confesses that it's more notorious than when it was mentioned by his instructor, and if he had gone in his past life, he would have died. The manager notices that he had problems with another guild last time, and that if it becomes too problematic, they can leave it to another guild. Yami tells him to behave in this meeting. Dissatisfied, Dan asks if he's someone who gets into conflicts. He mentally assumes that to cross the portal, he'll need a strong shield, but Wang Guho has a contract penalty. The manager, along with Dayan, takes a car to a large, luxurious building. As they exit the car, the driver bows before him and says he'll return soon. Dayan asks the driver not to do that again in the future, as he's already doing his best by carrying him. Raising his head again, the man says he understands. Yami praises him, saying he was very kind, but Dayan mentally assumes he doesn't like being around kind people. Someone greets him while introducing himself as Kim Hyamta from Black Hound, also introducing Wang Guho and team leader Jang Hyun. Dayan greets him, saying it's a pleasure to meet him, informing that he is the buyer. The man says he heard the story and apparently Dayan is interested in hiring Wang Guho for White House. Smiling, he says that the Stone Man is an important talent for them. Looking at him, Dayan supposes he will ask for something absurd to cancel the contract. The manager intervenes, saying that she understands Black Hound's position, but that they are not interested in paying 50 billion for the contract termination. With a sinister look, he says it's no longer 50 billion, as Dayan signed a new contract this morning. Leaving Youngi completely shocked, he informs that now the penalty for termination is 100 billion. Dayan presumes they are secretly recording somewhere, so he gets up and says they should leave. Dayan concludes that since the manager is the daughter of the owner of White House, she would be the perfect person to be marked as evil. Putting his arm around the Stone Man, Hyuntae says that apparently the buyer doesn't really need him. He says that if Dayan changes his mind, he can call him, but apparently the child liked the cake a lot and maybe they should go to the doctor, since he won a long time ago. Dayan mentally laments while delivering a powerful slap to Hyuntae's face. The team leader of the Black Hound Guild says that he's crazy and starts preparing to counterattack. However, Dayan delivers several strikes to his body, leaving him completely stunned. When he looks at Dayan, Dayan is already in front of him with a terrifying look. With a powerful kick, he throws him out of the room, breaking the door. The 2 guards who were guarding the door enter, saying that if he's going to fight, he better be sure he's stronger than Jang Sikhyun. Extremely irritated, Dayan tells them to stop the show and call the guild leader. Youngi, enchanted, asks if even when irritated, he can leave people alive like this. He says she doesn't seem too relieved by that. Dayan tells Lily that these things things may happen in the future, so she shouldn't eat everything they give her. He walks toward Wang Guho, concluding that the child is still fine, and that all of this could be a lie, but he must continue. With an extremely frightening look, he says he will have a talk with the man later. Suddenly, everyone's attention is drawn to a man with an incredible thirst for blood. As he enters, Dain informs that this is one of the most powerful humans, a legendary dog of the underworld. This was the warrior called Taichin, one of the greatest mages of the current time. The man asks if Dain called him and says he wants to understand how this situation ended up like this. Waving his hand, Dain says he will tell him everything, but first he must allow everyone to leave. The manager is confused while the guild master says that he really is a good friend and will take full responsibility alone. He asks Lily to accompany Youngie and go to the guild. She irritably asks if she should burn everything. Dain scolds her, saying she should never use fire without his permission, and that if that happens, she'll never eat chicken again. Dain sits in front of the master and asks what he wants from him. The master asks directly if Dain would like to work for him. Dain says the penalty for his contract would be too high. With an evil smile, he says he's not asking Dain to leave his current guild. Taichin says that Dain can continue working with White House, but you must send him information regularly. The master says he will pay him enough. Dain asks what would happen if he refuses. Releasing a bit of his mana, Taichin says that in that case, he will have to pay the price for bothering him. But interrupting the negotiation, Chang-Su starts ordering the master to bring the leader of the 7th team to him immediately. In front of the building with a spear in his hand, he says that if they don't leave by the end of his count, he will enter. While the representative is shouting, Dain appears behind him, asking what he's doing. He turns around and explains that they kidnapped one of his leaders, but Dain explains that they accepted his sincere apology. Trying to calm Chang-Su, he says that sometimes sincerity works. With a smile, Dain says that he heard Taichin has a very close relationship with Jisoo. Dain says it would be very bad if people found out that the CEO has a special relationship with his younger brother's wife. He says he'll remain silent if they accept his terms. First, release Wang Guho without any penalties. Second, by his silence. Dain recalls that before returning, the master's younger brother discovered his relationship and was dragged into it with the wife. The representative, extremely angry, asks how the master of the Black Hound Guild can be so dirty and confesses that he wants to hit him. But the manager, irritated, asks if he shouldn't be happy that nothing serious happened. Dad and wonders why Lily is quiet. He places his hand on her head, telling the child that she doesn't need to play with fire. Throwing a tantrum, she says she's hungry, leaving Dain even more confused. Yami approaches him, saying that the little girl is probably also worried. A bit confused, he asks if that's true. Concluding that this also happens with children, he asks the little girl if she wants to eat chicken for dinner tonight, assuming that if the manager or the representative didn't care about him, it wouldn't have tried to save him. A little later, Wang Guho, looking frightened, approaches him and greets him. He bows and apologizes for what happened, informing Da and that the master forced him to sign the contract. Da and asks him to sit. While offering him a drink, Dain informs him that the paperwork is already signed and that from now on he is a tank for their team. Dain remembers that this man was an orphan, shy and introverted, which is why he lived like a slave and was discarded during the first disaster. A bit awkward, the stone man asks why someone like Dain would choose someone weak and without talent. Turning his arms to stone, Wang Guho says he should tell him about his abilities in case he doesn't know. Dain leans his shoulder on him and asks him to stay still for a moment. He remembers the mobile fortress called Min Chiol, who will begin his incredible career as a hero in 10 years. But Wang currently has more endurance than the structures initially made by Min, so Dain believes he is better. Convinced that Wang is better, he says that in no more than 6 months, there will be no better tank in Seoul than him. Extremely surprised, the man starts to say that this isn't possible, but Dain assures him that he personally promises this, and that's why he will make him acquire the talent necessary to be the best. At this moment, Steam appears, saying that the food is ready, while the man remains completely enchanted by his leader. There was a innate soup with monster chunks. Dain orders everyone to take 3 bowls to prepare for the labyrinth of corrupted souls. After 2 days, they were on a mission to hunt monsters. Dain defends the stone man from a large white lion. Dain, now irritated, asks how a tank can be afraid and tells him to start blocking if he regrets it. Dain tells him to get as close as possible and grab the monster, preventing it from escaping. Dain explains that he ate mana nutritional foods for 2 days and also trained a lot, and for now he's still in the phase of increasing his petrification. After grabbing the animal, the feline begins attacking him with its claws. Even with fear and feeling some pain, he continues holding onto the monster. Dain says that if he doesn't hold onto the monster for an entire minute, they'll have to eat 6 plates of mana nutritional food. He tells Lily that the next one will be her. Irritated, she says she won't do it since he always gives her tasteless food and never buys chicken. He just says that today's dinner will be chicken, and she starts summoning a fireball while drooling. She launches her attack and they defeat the monster. While Lily and Dain argue, the stone man notices that compared to them, he's extremely weak. Dain asks the control room to find another monster, while mentally confessing that he needs more monsters to test them. Yami informs him that there's a monster at 7 o'clock, but another team from the warrior guild is closer. He asks about the detailed distance difference, and she says that they are 2 kilometers away, and the other team is 1 kilometer. Dain tells the little girl to follow him and help the rookie. They start arguing again while Wang Guho continues being scared. In the blink of an eye, Finally, Dayan speeds off. He confesses that he didn't forget to strengthen himself and ate the mana nutritional foods along with his training. Some awakened ones are running toward the monster, when suddenly, Dayan passes extremely fast by them, saying that this is his hurry. The other team starts preparing to attack from a distance, since whoever lands the first blow gets priority when claiming rewards. He uses an attack called Heavenly Palace. Quickly, he uses his blade to attack the monster. While complaining about his belt, the awakened ones wonder if he's a speed attack specialist. He informs the manager that the hunt is over and asks if there's another one coming. After some time, Lily is showing off, since she managed to do what he said, and asks if they'll have chicken now. Yahello says the portal closed and thanks the Team 7 for their work, while Dayan says they'll resolve things there. Some people approach them. One of them is Ilmam from the medical team, who asks if Dayan is okay. He says yes and tells the guy to help Lily wash her hands. His brother Lee Naum is from filming and says the video turned out amazing and wants to show it to the leader. While he looks at the footage, Seol from the equipment support team asks him to raise his arms for a look. Dayan says that the 3 Chian brothers that Youngie chose will soon gain fame in their respective areas, and he's curious about how she manages that. He says he hasn't memorized their names yet, but that in future dungeons, he'll give them a good rest and bonus. With a smile, Dayan asks them to take care of his team in the future. The brothers start saying that he's the best leader. Already in the car, the driver says that Dayan is very popular. He denies it, saying that he only observes the feelings of the people present in the field. Dayan confesses that he's already followed orders without questioning them, getting tired and leaving the guild, but the people on his team don't need to feel that. The manager of the Smile says that he knows how to handle people very well, and maybe it's his second life. She stops joking and hands him a document regarding the purchase of a specific item, also informing him that his weapon will be ready in 2 days. Youngie asks if this is the person he was looking for and says it was very difficult to find him, only managing it through a video. He was looking for Youngshin Jang, the only person in Korea with the ability to create. Dayan asks where the boy is now. Lily, wearing a beret, reminds Dad not to forget to buy 4 portions of boneless chicken and a large serving of fries. They walk together down the street, and Dayan responds that he will keep his promise. He also emphasizes that Lily needs to relay everything exactly as he taught her. With a cheerful expression, she agrees. The two enter a hair salon where they are greeted. The brown-haired girl cutting Dayan's hair comments that there are many toys there. In response, she explains that her son enjoys engaging in various activities. Lily sits on the couch and says she is bored, but Dayan asks her to stay quiet. Curious, she observes something and comments that it is very cute. Meanwhile, Dayan, now with his hair cut, looks worried and warns Lily not to touch anything as it might break. However, she hugs a chicken toy and exclaims that it is the same chicken she loves so much. The hairdresser then explains that her son made that toy and that they can take it if they like. Dayan apologizes and mentions that his cousin is very energetic. The woman smiles and says it is not a problem since there are many toys there. He then asks her son's age, and the woman replies that he is 13 years old. At that moment, Dayan remembers a photograph of a boy with his mother and thinks that young Shin, the hairdresser's son, might have Saiman syndrome. He reflects on this syndrome, a rare condition where individuals with developmental disabilities have exceptional abilities in certain areas of knowledge. He imagines that because of this, the boy's social skills must be limited, and that he does not like interacting with other people much. Looking at himself in the mirror, Dayan concludes that unlike other superhumans, he will need to approach young Shin naturally. To do so, he decides that he should visit the salon more often. The hairdresser comments that at that very moment, her son is probably creating something new inside the closet. Dayan asks if that is true and says he hopes he is not disturbing him with her loud conversations. Young Shin, surrounded by books and tools, is focused on assembling some device. His mother assures Dad and that it will not be a problem as her son becomes so immersed in his projects that he barely notices what is happening around him. With a serious expression, Dayan thinks that since they were not whispering, the boy should have heard the conversation if he were a superhuman. He wonders if it is worth checking on him now. Suddenly, young Shin grips the screwdriver in his hand, leaves the room, and asks his mother if everything is okay. Surprised, the woman questions why he came out without anyone calling him. Dayan deduces that since he came out immediately, he must be able to sense mana and confirms to himself that the boy is, indeed, a superhuman. Meanwhile, Lily makes a mischievous expression and thinks that it is time for the chicken plan. Smiling, she pushes the chicken toy toward young Shin and asks if he made it, praising its adorable appearance. The boy, a bit suspicious, asks if she is curious, and Lily replies that she is. Blushing, she clasps her hands together and with admiration says that the toy is amazing and that he has a lot of talent. Young Shin's cheeks also turn red and he comments that it is nothing special. Excited, Lily responds that it is really cool and adds that she loves chicken before asking another question. Young Shin replies that he prefers pizza. Dayan observes the conversation and thinks that Lily still had some difficulty speaking Korean, but she was making an effort. The black-haired boy mentions that he has many different things and asks if he can show them. Dayan is surprised while Lily asks if it is true and excited exclaims that it would be interesting to see. The hairdresser, surprised, says she cannot believe that young Shin spoke to someone. Dayan reflects that this little boy really fell for her. Lily sits across from young Shin in his room. Dayan thinks that they managed to recruit someone capable of of creating equipment for superhumans worth hundreds of billions. He imagines young Shin extending his hand forward, a robot behind him, and Lily exclaiming about the 4 portions of boneless chicken awaiting her. Diane concludes that young Shin became a member of the guild immediately the next day, and a few days later created battle uniforms. Wearing a white cloak, he comments that it is true that Leader X's skin is perfect for the uniform, and then asks Lily what she thinks of the new clothes. The girl, wearing a green jacket and pants, exclaims that the uniform is comfortable and beautiful. She is happy to notice that there is an embroidery of chicken and pizza on the sleeves. She remembers when young Shin knitted a sweater and, upon approaching him, thought that Lily liked chicken while he preferred pizza. Tu approaches Diane to talk about the uniform, but he, with a serious expression, says that it is not necessary. He reflects that he did everything he could in a short period. Univy informs that the support team has completed the preparations and that they need to leave immediately. Diane turns to the group members and announces that it is time to move forward. Univy closes her eyes, smiles, and asks if Diane has changed his style, commenting that it must be hard to maintain that hairstyle. With disheveled hair, he makes a displeased expression, thinking that it is no surprise that there were no alliances in the hair salon. Yahello yells, questioning someone about what he is talking about and what it means that another guild entered first. A portal appears in the middle of the road. A man tells the girl that he allowed them to enter because they claimed the coup order had changed and that they would be late. Univy yells, demanding that the brown-haired boy repeat what he said. Diane reflects that 4 guilds were participating in the joint task. He visualizes the guild emblems: a white tiger for the warriors, a bull for the bull, a red shark for the shark, and a black wolf for the black hound. He realizes that, at first glance, it was clear that these 3 guilds were trying to mock them. Closing his eyes, Diane tells Yui and the brown-haired boy that this confrontation will not change anything, so they should follow the original plan. The girl averts her gaze, showing nervousness, and comments that even if they left now, there probably would not be anything left there. She apologizes, admitting that she should have prepared better. Diane claps his hands, suggesting that they should not worry in advance, and adds that, who knows, they might find something even better. There are traces of blood under a car. Diane observes and comments that everything has been cleaned up. Solar responds that it is fine since, after all, it is a dungeon. 3 cars drive down the road, 2 hours after entering the Fallen Spirits Labyrinth. Diane thought he would offer a ride, but they missed the chance. Behind him, So smiled, thinking that resting was good. Diane reflected that it did not matter because they would meet again. Suddenly, the image of several circuits appeared in his mind. He remembered that the Labyrinth of Fallen Spirits started off easy, but after successive failures, it became the worst dungeon. Remaining alert, he ordered everyone to stop. He noticed something strange and instructed Go to stay behind to protect the machines. Moving ahead of the stopped vehicles, Diane entered the dark passage, where cracks covered the walls. He reflected that the dungeon was named this way because it turned those who entered it into monsters. So and NM were confused by what they saw. 3 zombies wearing red clothes were walking toward the group. Diane analyzed their attire and concluded that they were likely members of the Red Shark Guild. He observed one of the dead, a man with long hair, and noticed that they had been bitten, as their sharp teeth were capable of piercing even a combat uniform. He deduced that this must have happened when they let their guard down. Perhaps they had been separated from the rest of the guild, which would explain why there were so few of them. Diane halted his march and ordered Go to go ahead to demonstrate the results of his training. Go hesitated, pointed at himself, and asked if he really had to go alone. With a serious tone, Diane stated that even a scratch could infect them. Frightened, Go replied that in that case he couldn't afford to be bitten. Diane gave him a slight push and told him not to be a coward. Determined, Go clenched his fists and ran toward the zombies, who stretched their arms toward him. Part of his face and hands turned to stone, and he declared that he would try. Diane noticed that his petrified state was better than during training. Then he warned him not to kill him. Worried, Go asked what he should do, and Diane replied that he would have to figure it out himself. Go struck one of the zombies in the head and excitedly exclaimed that he had managed to hit it. Lily sighed, bored, and asked Dad if they couldn't just burn them. Watching the battle, Diane replied that they weren't just civilians but also members of another guild, so she shouldn't consider killing them. He asked the support team how things were going. One of the members, holding a camera, exclaimed that they were already recording everything. Diane stated that they were documenting these images to demand compensation, so they should film accurately. So, holding sets of clothes, announced that she had finished preparing the repellent suits. Diane responded that they would quickly finish the fight and put them on. Yelan, with a bag in hand, reported that he had brought the antidote entrusted to him. Diane said that was great, as the antidote was the most important thing in a dungeon like that. With a firm gaze, he watched Go, who was blocking the zombies' attacks around him. Diane thought that the Red Shark Guild's support team members had succumbed easily to the disease, but the others were still resisting. Suddenly, 2 zombies attacked Go simultaneously, forcing him to grit his teeth in pain. Diane noticed that, by the way they moved, those 2 zombies were superhuman. He then struck one of them. Dayan hit one of the zombies in the nape with 2 fingers and declared that he had knocked out the first one. Quickly, he moved behind another zombie and struck it in the nape as well, bringing down the second one. With a few additional blows, he countered the 3rd and 4th zombies falling to the ground. Surprised, Go asked how Dayan could do that so easily. Standing among the defeated enemies, Dayan counted the 5th zombie, looked around, and asked if there was anyone left. Then he announced to the group that they had finished the fight. Closing his eyes, he instructed Tank to arrange the bodies in a row. Impressed, Yo accepted the order with admiration on his face. Dayan remembered the bag with vials of yellow liquid and reflected on the exceptional antidote against zombie venom. He visualized a wasp and thought that after being bitten by a zombie, a person had only 10 minutes before they began to act uncontrollably. After another half hour, they would transform into a worker, protecting the zombie's hive. Dark images of the undead passed through his mind. He tested an antidote on a defeated zombie and concluded that after half an hour of infection, the affected ones would still have cognitive difficulties. Turning to Lily, Joe, and Anam, he ordered them to step back as he needed to concentrate. With a sinister smile, he addressed the terrified survivors on the ground and stated that he had saved them, so now it was their turn to help. Dayan, with a syringe in hand, thought that those with talent could focus on it and perfect it. However, with the increasing survival rates, people like him needed to acquire multiple skills. He adds that this was the reason why in his past life he traveled through different dimensions. On the continent of Gaia, in front of the castle, there is a bridge over the Mam River, and a grand staircase leads to a building with a curved roof. Under a purple underworld light, a building is situated among the rocks, and a clock emerges among several gears. On the continent of Byron, Dayan reflected on how he had managed to survive thanks to magical and martial arts he had learned during his travels. He blew the whistle and thought that one of the things he had learned there was an animal control technique for creatures with low intelligence levels. The main character informs the members of the Red Shark Guild that from now on they will fight alongside them. He asks if they understand, and seeing the recovered men smiling cheerfully, he smiles slightly. With a small smile on his face, he says that since they have agreed, they can start hunting the zombie bees and following his orders. He commands them to advance. Goho, exhausted and wearing a closed yellow suit, shouts to Dad in that he has captured the queen bees, but there are too many of them around. Behind him, 3 people in suits are fighting while he carries a box. Dad praises the tank and, looking at Lily, asks her to burn them so they can eat them later. The girl agrees and forms a fireball above her, placing her hands forward, from which a powerful flame emerges. Go runs to her side. Dad comments that he did not expect the Red Shark members to help them so actively. A volleyball bounces against the wall while Lily and the others, dressed in red, play with a sword. Dad asks the commander if he did anything suspicious to them. He crosses his arms and says that, as they had informed him, they would be happy to help as a way to repay. Dad extends his hand to the side and states that they have finished verifying the anti-insect suit and can now move forward. The brown-haired boy standing next to Lily agrees with his words. Dad asks the group to stop because someone is approaching. Someone wearing boots walks on the stone floor and 3 muscular men in black hoodies appear ahead. Lily exclaims that they are the same ones she saw with the slugs. Dad observes them with a suspicious look. The Warrior Guild is in action. 5 guys in black hoodies and Lily are playing with a volleyball. Dad sighs, adjusts his hair, and says he hopes they are also grateful and ready to correct their mistakes, with a serious expression on his face. Then he realizes that everything was simpler than he had imagined. On the 4th day in the dungeon, Anam, holding a box, informs Dad and that the monsters have made their way to the supplies and devoured them. Dad extends his hand and asks to see. He analyzes the marks and concludes that based on the clues, they must be nearby. Lily whistles, and the members of the Warrior Guild and Red Shark run toward the red rats. Dayan watches Lily, who is petting one of the warriors sitting like a dog. He thinks that this made things even easier for him since she liked controlling them. Nearby, there are defeated and poisoned red rats, or what is left of them. Dayan closes his eyes and lowers his head, thinking that he had prepared for various situations. But everything was going well, though he should not let his guard down. He adds that the boss-level monsters are still around somewhere. Red smoke flies between the columns. Several zombies in black and red clothing stand in the room. A bat holds a mirror with its horns, a demonic mirror bat. Dayan thought that this was the mid-boss. He orders his team to prepare for battle and then instructs them to leave the vehicles behind. He tells Go to advance and whistles, after which the fighters from the Warrior Guild and the Red Sharks charge toward the enemies. Dayan thought that he had brainwashed the Red Sharks and the Warriors, so the mirror would not work on them. He believed that this monster showed illusions to anyone who looked into the mirror, turning them into its minions. 3 men with malicious smiles run toward Dayan's group. Dayan thought that the rest of his team should be careful. The main character shouts, "Bello, don't look at his mirror." Tank, with a worried expression on his face, wants to say something in a trembling voice, but Dayan and Lily yell at him, calling him a coward and immature. The main character orders the girl to create a fire shield so the enemies cannot pass. Dayan moves his hand to the side and orders everyone to move at least 2 kilometers away while he gathers some information and then joins them. He points to the cars while the people from the Warrior warrior guild and the red sharks run toward them. Lily, with fireballs above her hands, asks Dae if it is worth burning everything here. Dae responds that normally he would agree, but for now, she should put out the fire. He uses camouflage. With Lily in his hands, he passes by Goho, who does not understand where he went. The girl crosses her arms and thinks that Goho is a foolish coward. The main character, with a tired look, wonders where the bat is. He takes 3 daggers from his pocket and throws them at the bat, but misses. There is an orange light coming from the bat's mirror. The main character thought that camouflage did not work on it. He closes Lily's eyes and thinks that the enemy was flying back and forth, not in a straight line, so it was worth stepping back for now to understand how it moved. Enam addresses the commander. He tells him with a smile on his face that he is back. Behind him is Sola, and in front of him is Eel. Enam asks Dae if he is injured. The main character extends his hand and says that he will explain to everyone what to do, adding that there is little time, so they must hurry. A bat flies through a dark corridor. Dae turns and orders the technical support team to retreat. Someone from the support team shouts that the fortification is complete and they are retreating. Dae orders them to prepare for battle. Members of the warrior guild and red sharks position themselves behind metal shields. The bat opens its mouth wide. 2 zombies raise their hands and one of them screams. Zombies attack the shields behind which the allied guild members are hiding. Dae jumps off the ground and strikes the bat. The monster dodges Dae's attack. Dae calls Lily. The girl puts on sunglasses and directs fireballs at the bat. The monster dodges the fireballs. Lily grits her teeth in frustration. The bat laughs maliciously. Dae uses the shield ability, after which a barrier forms near the monster. Dae jumps and attacks the monster, but the bat dodges. Lily forms a shield under Dae's feet. He looks at the enemy and thinks that no matter how fast their movements are, he will be able to see them. How many attacks can he dodge? Dae throws a dagger toward the bat. He makes a quick slash at the bat and cuts off its head. The main character smirks maliciously and says he will take the mirror for himself. He says that the end has come. Nearby, there is a blue gate with horns protruding from the wall. The main character orders them not to lower their guard just because they have just arrived. Healed people push the gate. Lily, with a worried expression on her face, asks Dae how long the little coward will remain like that. Goho, behind them, places his hand behind his head, thinking it was nothing. Dae, with a serious expression on his face, says that he plans to leave him alone until they defeat the boss. He adds that he has a feeling that otherwise he will be brainwashed again. Behind the gate, someone in a hood stands in the middle of the hall. It is a skeleton with blue flames coming out of its eyes. You look more closely at Dae's group. Spirit Hunter, a skeleton clad in armor with a sword in hand, said something in an unknown language. Dae whistled, and many healed guild members, with Goho at the forefront, rushed toward the enemy. Tank asked the skeleton if he was one of his fans. The skeleton opened its mouth and screamed. Goho's hands and part of his face turned to stone, after which he said that hugs were always welcome. He struck at the young man, but Goho protected himself with his stone hands, blocking the attack. Goho called the skeleton a hater, with a worried expression on his face. The skeleton drew its sword. Dae thought that Goho was a little shy, but was holding up well. He added that this was the moment he had trained for. Members of other guilds surrounded the skeleton. The skeleton let out a scream and a large blue circle appeared on the ground. It had used Spirit Link, a long-range magic that turned those nearby into puppets. Dae, with a slight smile on his face, thought that this magic would not work on them. 2 guys from the Warriors Guild were hitting the enemy from behind. An orange glow emanated from the mirror on the back of Dae's hand, and he thought that the mirror from the defeated demon bat and its little trick kept them under mental control, making the spiritual connection useless. Goho was wrapped in red energy chains and thought with a joyful expression that it was wonderful to be a celebrity. The surprised skeleton turned around. It gripped the sword with both hands. Goho grabbed the enemy's sword and said that he loved it too. Dae told Lily that she would be leaving soon, and the girl replied that she understood. An orange glow emanated from the skeleton's eyes as it used the Spirit Hunter's second ability. It used demonic summoning, and a magic circle appeared. Many red circles appeared around the skeleton, radiating energy. Dae wondered if this was monkey summoning magic, and then added that he had prepared for this in advance. Many smiling monkeys emerged from the energy. Flames emanated from Lily's hand. Now the skeleton was surrounded by many flames. The girl extended her hand forward, and many flames appeared before her. After that, she said they would burn everything here, and then eat some chicken. Concern was visible on the skeleton's face. Dae withdrew his hand and told Lily that she was smart and would be responsible for destroying the monkeys. The skeleton made an angry expression. It threw a sword with Goho toward Dae, but he deflected it. Dae, with a worried expression, thought that he seemed to have seen something but would pretend he hadn't. Goho, behind Dae, embraced the sword with a look full of love. Dae thought that now was not his turn to join the fight. 3 healed fighters attacked the skeleton. Dae watched the battle with his arms crossed and thought that his goal was to clear the dungeon safely and with minimal effort. He added that once those bastards exhausted their strength, he would join in. An hour later, the skeleton let out a loud scream and golden energy emanated from its eyes. Dae thought that this was the moment and whistled. 2 healed turned toward Dae. Dayan placed his hand on his belt and asked the skeleton if it was tired of waiting, that invited it to finish this quickly. The skeleton's eyes turned red, and it said something to Dayan in a different language. The enemy said something that Dayan did not understand, but it seemed to call him a cowardly scoundrel. It added that it hoped its words were clear to him. The skeleton swung its fist toward Dayan, who quickly moved toward it. Dayan thought that some people had no choice. They could only live this way. He showed the enemy the back of his palm with a mirror, which then began to glow. The skeleton opened its mouth. Dayan thought that it could not be brainwashed by the mirror of illusion, but might let its guard down for a moment. The main character clenched his hand into a fist, which was then enveloped in a massive amount of blue energy. He used the skill Lightning Strike Fist, and then struck the skeleton with powerful, crackling energy. The enemy's armor was destroyed and cracks appeared in its body. Dayan realized something and then opened his eyes in surprise. He saw a blue crystal, the Spirit Stone. He thought that not even high-level magic stones could compare to this. This treasure allowed its bearer to perform a miracle. He added that this was also the reason he had decided to enter the Fallen Spirit's labyrinth. He removed the Spirit Stone from the enemy's body and said that he would make good use of it. Lily, with a worried expression, asked if it was all over. Dayan, with a malicious smile, held the stone in his hand. He thought that this was an incredible discovery and then imagined a muscular, shirtless version of himself wrapped in blue energy. He added that now he would be able to use transformation. He rested his chin and imagined himself sunbathing on the beach, then thought that if he completed this, his body would enter a practical state due to his mastery of martial arts, but that wasn't what interested him. He added that he wanted to slow down aging and increase his lifespan so he could enjoy his young body long after retirement, which he would reach in 3 years. Lily, with wide eyes, asked Dayan what that was in his hands and if it was tasty. Dayan switched the stone between his hands and told Lily that no, the stone was edible, and she would get sick if she tried. The girl, with an irritated expression, asked Dayan why he had tried to eat it himself. Dayan clenched the stone with a smile on his face, and confusion could be seen on Lily's face. The stone in Dayan's hand crumbled into dust. Lily looked at Dayan, disappointed, and thought that the stone would have been worth $1 million at an auction if he had decided not to use it. The girl asked Dayan, who fell to his knees, if he had really stopped fighting. Dayan wondered why the stone had disappeared. He looked at the watch on his arm. The hands of his watch had begun to move rapidly. Dayan, with a malicious smile, thought that this meant the watch was powered by magical energy. The reporter said that the 4 guilds united by a single goal, the task of destroying the gates, should have returned by now. He added that 10 days had passed. Halfway there, outside the enclosed area, there was a portal. The reporter said that experts believed they were dead. Yvai watched the report with a sad expression on her face, using her smartphone. The man asked her if she was here again. Yvai calls him uncle. A man wearing a black shirt and holding a spear tells the girl that the second team will return unharmed, so she shouldn't worry so much. Commander of the second White House, Ban Wook. Uni averts her eyes to the side with a worried expression and tells the man that the other guilds do not plan to send rescue teams. She adds that she knows his team is capable of clearing an A-rank dungeon, but you should still be careful. The man replies that it's fine, she can count on him. Wook stands near the portal with his men and orders them to move. The portal begins to spin faster. Wook shouts for his people to wait because something is happening with the gate and they need to prepare for battle. Dayan emerges from the portal with Lily behind him, and then cars start coming out as well. Wook approaches Dayan with a smile on his face. Univi hugs Dayan, leaving him very surprised. Dayan, with an annoyed expression, asks the girl what she's suddenly doing and then tells her that there's a child sitting on his back, so she should let him go. Ivy asks Dayan what delayed him, and he responds that some unforeseen circumstances occurred, which shouldn't be discussed in front of everyone. The girl insists, saying no, she was really worried. Tired, Lily, still on Dayan's back, says she has no more strength and just wants to go home. Dayan, impatient, waits for the application processing while a reporter reports that superhumans have returned alive thanks to the White House, highlighting the danger of the portal and the dispute between guilds. Meanwhile, his driver mentions the national debate surrounding their actions. Dayan looks out the window and responds that this only gives him more headaches. He slightly turns his head and asks the driver if he had mentioned that it didn't rain while he was in the dungeon. The driver confirms, stating that the sky remained clear without a single cloud. Above the city, a rainbow stretches across the horizon. The driver then asks if he is interested in the phenomenon and informs him that the rainbow appeared 4 days ago. With a cautious look, Dayan reflects that this is not a natural phenomenon but a premonition of the first great catastrophe. In his mind, he envisions a rainbow against a cloudy sky and thinks that color by color, it will begin to disappear. On the day it vanishes completely, the disaster will begin, the night of the 7 moons. He visualizes monsters emerging from hundreds of portals and remembers that in the past he barely escaped by taking shelter. However, now everything is different. Lily sleeps beside him on the couch. He raises his hand, clenching it into a fist, and thinks that he is stronger than before. Observing his own hand with a determined gaze, he recalls the watch that absorbed mana from the Spirit Stone. Lily, dressed in an elegant red dress adorned with a bow and roses, comments that the waist is a little tight. Dayan, wearing a formal black suit with a white shirt, holds a white and yellow outfit and suggests suggests that she wear overalls instead. However, Lily immediately refuses, saying it's ugly. He then asks what she suggests he do. He recalls Univi, who with a displeased expression questioned how Lily could not own a formal dress. Did she really only have loungewear? Diane, keeping a serious expression, thinks that since the dress was a gift for Lily, she would be sad if she didn't wear it. Thus, he insists that she go with that outfit, and if she feels uncomfortable, she can change later. Excited, Lily agrees and praises him, saying he's a genius. Diane remembers that when the team returned safely from the dungeon, a party was organized at the White House. Kanes, standing beside his daughter, raises his hand and announces the arrival of the great heroes of the night. He warmly embraces Diane and states that he always knew they would return alive. Diane, on the other hand, stares at the guild leader and, with an ironic tone, asks if he plans to kill him personally. Meanwhile, Univi compliments Lily, saying that the dress looks great on her. Smiling, Lily thanks her for the gift. The young woman with black hair observes the girl and comments that her way of speaking is improving every day. Shin, with flushed cheeks, invites Lily to have dinner together. The girl presses her palms together and accepts the invitation. Univi covers her mouth, delighted by the scene, thinking about how adorable it is. Lily approaches Shin and asks what they will eat. Diane watches the people gathered around the tables and reflects that everyone seems to be enjoying the night. He recalls that at the Blackhound Guild, he could never have even dreamed of something like this. At that moment, the guild leader turns to speak with him. Tonight, Diane, holding a glass in his hand, looks back. Kansong, smiling, asks what his goals are. Diane asks in what sense he means. Kansong replies that he is curious to know what the dreams of young people today are. He asks if Diane wants to become the strongest in the world or amass unimaginable wealth. Diane sighs and says that his goal is to retire. He explains that he plans to earn a lot of money, build a 99,900 square meter mansion, invite friends, and do whatever he wants. Confusion can be seen on the faces of Chan Song, Go, and Univi. The black-haired girl closes her eyes and tells Dad that his goal is wonderful. Go, with a happy expression, comments that a peaceful life sounds like a good idea. Surprised, Chan Suk asks Diane if he wants to become stronger by training with him. Uni turns to the guild leader with an irritated expression. Diane, maintaining a serious demeanor, reflects that at first he only planned to avoid the dangers that would happen in the future. However, now he realizes that he has the potential to become stronger and has found companions he can trust. The rainbow in the sky is becoming more transparent. Diane thinks that if the disasters cannot be avoided, then it's worth creating a plan to take advantage of the situation. A bright light illuminates the lake. Chan Sun clenches his fists and comments that he didn't expect such a beautiful lake to be located in the forbidden territory. Beside him are Diane, Goho, and Lily. He takes off his clothes and runs into the water, shouting that his spirit has been revitalized by being close to nature. Uni, wearing a swimsuit, sits on a cloth and calls out to Diane. Turning his head toward her, she asks him to apply sunscreen on her back since she can't reach it herself. Diane reaches his own back and suggests that she practice stretching because, for example, he can reach without any problems. Irritated, Uni asks if he couldn't just agree. Diane points his thumb toward Goho and Rice Cake and says that if she needs help, she can ask them. She looks at Rice Cake and realizes that she hasn't greeted him yet. Curious, she asks who he is. The young man, surprised, thinks that the beautiful girl is interested in him. He approaches Diane, presses his palm against his chest, and introduces himself as MJ, known by the nickname Red Bean Rice Cake. Uni brushes her hair back with a smile and tells MJ that she's happy to meet him, but they are not that close yet. Diane, irritated, tells the young man that if he says something like that again, he will rename him. With a threatening look, he suggests calling him Blood Pie. Beads of sweat roll down MJ's face. Diane waves at the guild leader and challenges him to a swimming competition. Kan-sun replies that it sounds fun. With a smile, Diane declares that whoever reaches the other side of the lake first will win. He removes his clothes and jumps into the water. Diane and Chan-sun swim quickly across the lake. With a nervous expression, Diane thinks that the guild leader is the first superhuman and therefore is incredibly fast. Chan-sung is far ahead. Diane imagines that thanks to him, he might achieve a great feat. Suddenly, Chan-sung notices something underwater. A massive red octopus emerges before him. With an enraged expression, he glares at the monster and asks how it dares to interrupt his competition. He leaps high into the air and raises his fist, preparing to strike. Then he delivered a powerful blow against the octopus. The monster's head showed a large dent on its forehead. Chan-sun unleashed numerous strikes against the creature. Diane, with a curious look, noticed that Chan-sun was fighting with his bare hands. He thought it would be a good idea to have him by his side. Swimming closer to the octopus, he asked the leader if he was okay. Diane commented that he hadn't expected a monster to appear there. Chan-sun turned his head toward him and said he was glad Diane wasn't hurt because the forbidden zone was full of surprises. He looked toward the shore and noticed that they had drifted quite far away, then expressed concern for the others and suggested they head back. Diane agreed but mentioned that he would stay a little longer to examine the lakebed. Chan-sun asked if he would do that alone. Then he swam toward the shore and shouted to Diane not to take too long as they would be waiting for him for dinner. Diane watched Chan-sun as he left and thought that he had already cleared the area they were in, so monsters shouldn't appear. Activating his shield ability, he dived. A barrier formed around his head. As he looked around, he reflected that the kraken had probably died because it interfered with him. However, he added that the real problem was waiting for him in the depths. Sinking deeper and deeper, he imagined that there was certainly a treasure hidden there. Suddenly, he noticed an intense glow. Dayan peeked through a crack in the wall and concluded that he had finally found what he was looking for. Now he could return to the others and enjoy his vacation. Later, he would come back with the baby. However, a whirlpool suddenly formed not far from him. His eyes widened in surprise. The current began pulling him in. The barrier around his head disappeared. He reached his hand forward and, in his mind, cursed his own weakness. He remembered that he had promised to return soon. He called out for Lily. She suddenly turned around as if she had heard his voice. Uni moved, watched the two of them. Meanwhile, young Shin handed a strange food item to Lily and told her to eat it before the commander returned. The girl thanked the boy and drank a liquid from a cup. Excited, she exclaimed that she would eat before he got back. A greenish glow emanated from a crack. There was a shoreline inside a cave near an underground lake. Droplets of water fell onto Dayan's head. He slowly opened his eyes. Beside him, a fairy exclaimed in surprise that he had awakened. Another fairy asked what they should do. A third, worried, questioned if something bad was going to happen. The long-haired fairy frowned and asked Dayan who he was. He observed them and thought he recognized these creatures. Breaking the ropes that bound him, he asked the fairies if they were the ones who had brought him there. Startled, one of them screamed that he had broken free. Another exclaimed that he looked evil. A third held her head and cried out in desperation that he was going to destroy them. Dayan sighed and reassured the hidden fairies that he wouldn't kill them, asking them to calm down. He then imagined a green branch of a plant. He thought about how the continent of Noel was home to magical plants, animals, and fairies. He recalled that when he worked there as a guide for a few months, he only encountered fairies near clear water. In his mind, he visualized a long-haired fairy whose hair tips looked like they were covered in snow. He knew that Snowflake was one of the representatives of the kind and innocent fairies, so he asked the fairies if they were snowflakes. The long-haired fairy looked at him in surprise and asked if he knew them. Curious, she asked if Dayan had ever been to Noel. Another fairy wanted to know if he could really speak their language. With a worried look, Dayan asked them to take turns with their questions. With a serious expression, he thought that in his past life, there was no information about fairies living there. If events were changing, this could be problematic. He decided to ask what they were doing there. The fairies' expressions turned sad. The long-haired fairy explained that they lived in a lake, but suddenly they were transported to another dimension. Dayan concluded that they must be referring to the first gate. 3 fairies flew over the lake with worried expressions. The long-haired fairy reported that monsters had appeared, fought among themselves, and devoured each other. The octopus ended up killing many of them. 3 fairies fled from a massive octopus. Dayan realized they were talking about the kraken. A curly-haired fairy, smiling, explained that because of this, they hid at the bottom of the lake and found refuge there. Dayan crossed his arms and acknowledged that they had gone through a tough situation. He thought that since they had been exterminated in the past, there was no record of them. The long-haired fairy, with a worried expression, revealed that they had no future. They were weakening due to the lack of sunlight and couldn't leave because of the octopus. With a serious expression, Dayan informed them that the octopus was dead and that they could leave now. The fairies were surprised. The long-haired fairy asked Dayan not to lie. He extended his hand and suggested they check for themselves. The long-haired fairy nodded and declared that they would see for themselves. She touched Dayan's palm with her tail, and a green glow emanated from the contact. Other fairies gasped in amazement as they watched the scene. The fairies exclaimed that it was true because the color was green. The short-haired fairy and the curly-haired fairy flew around Dayan, thanking him for avenging them and allowing them to leave. Dayan placed a hand on his head and with an annoyed expression asked them to stop because they were making him dizzy. He walked through the cave, followed by the fairies. One of them excitedly exclaimed that they were friends now, and Dayan agreed. He reflected on his original goal, to obtain an unattainable power. If he had succeeded, dealing with the first disaster would have been easier. Dayan imagined a jar filled with blue liquid. He thought that, however, it was protected by a guardian. In his mind, he visualized a magical creature with blue eyes and enormous metal arms. He remembered trying to discover its exact location, but ended up making a deal with the snowman. He imagined coins falling in large quantities and concluded that he needed to resolve this situation. Then he pictured himself lying in a hammock by the lake, thinking that he could become rich if he turned that lake into a snowflake-themed amusement park. Meanwhile, the long-haired fairy warned Dayan about a trap ahead and advised him not to step on it. He jumped over the trap and assured her that he would be careful. Looking at the fairy, he thought that he would have had a hard time if he were alone. The fairy beamed and exclaimed that they were almost there. Dayan continued walking on the stone floor, accompanied by the fairies. Suddenly, one of them asked him to stop and suggested they greet a friend. Another fairy added that he was the one who had allowed them to live there. With a concerned expression, Dayan asked if there was really someone there. Immediately after, he asked them not to tell him that it was a small, tough, white-bodied rascal, about half his size. The long-haired fairy confirmed it was true and asked if Dayan knew him. She waved her arms and exclaimed that he was strong, which had prevented the octopus from reaching them. Dayan deduced that they were talking about the guardian. He then decided that the fairies could go say goodbye to him because he would wait for them there. However, the fairies stopped and informed him that they had already arrived. Before Dayan, a short creature with massive arms emerged. He cursed the situation in his mind. The guardian, with an electronic voice, announced that an intruder had been detected and that the passage was closed. Immediately, the gate behind Dayan shut on its own. He cursed again, realizing that his escape route was blocked. The guardian began to transform, becoming a much taller creature with sharp claws. Intruder analysis complete. Confirmation of the need for destruction, the machine declared. Dayan, now with a serious expression, asked the fairies if this friend of theirs was truly trustworthy. He pointed out that the guardian had classified him as a target to be eliminated. The long-haired fairy questioned whether the guardian's appearance had changed. The creature lunged at Dayan and announced that it would begin his destruction. Dayan was unfazed and said that this wasn't so bad either. Suddenly, a metallic armor appeared on his left arm. With confidence, he declared that he could test his abilities. The guardian attacked with its sharp claws. Dayan managed to block the blow, but was pushed back due to the impact's force. He clenched his left fist and thought that he couldn't do anything about the weight difference, but in the end, this wasn't too bad. The guardian looked at its destroyed hand and then coldly announced, "The intruder's threat level has been reassessed. High." Weapons were unlocked and Dayan quickly moved from his position, confirming that he had been fully identified as a target. He struck the guardian again and asked if it really thought you would just stand there and wait. A crackling energy formed near the guardian's head, which then stated that self-repair had been activated. Dayan realized that the guardian was probably a robot with the ability to heal itself. The guardian attempted another attack, but Dayan dodged, thinking that he had a problem. He hadn't put enough strength into his glove. The guardian kept attacking, but Dayan continued to evade, considering that it might be best to retreat for now. He looked at the wall and thought about breaking it to escape. At that moment, the long-haired fairy placed herself between the two combatants with an angry expression and asked the guardian, called Snowblind, to stop fighting. She pointed at Dayan and said that he was their friend. Dayan looked at the fairy with a worried expression, thinking that she was being foolish. The guardian, using a camera, observed the smiling fairy and stated that this was not a destruction target as it could not be destroyed. Dayan asked the guardian where it was looking and struck it with an iron-gloved punch. The long-haired fairy held her head and screamed, asking Dayan why he had attacked Snowblind. With a mischievous smile, Dayan replied that they would talk later. The fairy, now alarmed, exclaimed that everyone was friends. 3 fairies cried near the defeated guardian, begging it not to die. The curly-haired fairy yelled at Dayan, saying that he was their friend, while a square-haired fairy accused him of killing Snowblind. Dayan grabbed his wrist with his right hand and said that the guardian attacked first, asking if they would rather he had died instead. He sat down, called the guardian a golem, and asked if he had now proven his qualifications. The guardian responded that the test was over and the mission was complete. Dayan took a key from a compartment that had opened in the guardian's torso, thinking that now he only had to find the vault. The long-haired fairy cried out Snowblind's name, while the curly-haired fairy waved her arms, telling Dayan that he was no longer their friend. The long-haired fairy shouted, insisting that friends don't kill friends. With a skeptical expression, Dayan replied that it wasn't him who did this, adding that Snowblind could be brought back to life. The curly-haired fairy, now smiling, asked what he meant. The long-haired fairy saw a green light when she touched Dayan's palm with her tail and exclaimed that he was telling the truth. Dayan sighed, thinking that they were a walking headache, but they were naive. He reflected that with modern technology, it wouldn't be possible to recreate a golem like that, but Shin, the young man, specialized in manufacturing and had the ability to reset it. A light shone from the key in Dayan's hand, and he said that something more important was about to happen. He walked up to the gate and exclaimed that it was incredible. The long-haired fairy said that this place had been opened for the first time and asked Dayan what he was looking for. He looked around and replied that he was searching for something very important. Upon seeing a jar with blue liquid, he said, "This is it." A window appeared with a description of the elixir of life. According to the text, it was a golden beverage. Dayan told the fairy that there wasn't much left, but he would give her more when he was satisfied. The long-haired fairy drank from the jar, began to glow intensely, and screamed. Dayan covered his face with his hand and wondered if it truly had a different effect on water fairies. The long-haired fairy, now smiling, exclaimed that her body felt lighter. With a worried expression, Dayan replied that it was fine, they would deal with it later. He added that he didn't need anything else there and that it was time to leave. He asked the fairies to take the golem with them, and they agreed. agreed. The afternoon sun was visible above, and Dayan emerged from underwater along with the fairies. One of the fairies told Dae and that they had arrived. Dayan looked up with a nervous expression and asked if she was wandering in her sleep. He saw Lily creating a massive amount of flames and asked if she was playing with fire again. The girl spread her arms, a serious expression on her face, and called Dae an uncle when she noticed him. Dayan shouted for her to put out the fire and come down immediately, then asked if she really wanted to destroy the lake. The flames around her vanished. Chan, who was standing on the shore, shouted and asked Dae and where he had been. Dayan, with an alarmed expression on his face, thought that if he had taken any longer, there would have been consequences. He swam to the surface and said that the situation had been an emergency. Chan Sang told Dae and that he was glad he had returned safely and managed to stop Lily. Otherwise, she would have dried up the lake. Yuni ran to her father and asked if he had found the commander. Go ran after her and approached Dayan. The head turned towards them and ordered them to stop the search. Yunwei hugged Dayan and asked where he had been if he was being mistreated. Kan Song widened his eyes and told Dae and that there were monsters behind him. Dayan grabbed Yuni by the forearm and told them both to calm down, saying that these were new friends. He added that he would explain everything in detail later. Lily had butted Dayan's chest and shouted, demanding to know where he had been. She punched him several times, yelling that it was already dinner time and he was nowhere to be found. With an angry expression, she shouted that she had to skip dinner to look for him and called him a fool. Dayan looked at the girl with a small smile, surrounded by his team members, and patted Lily's head, apologizing for being late. Dayan thought that the vacation hadn't lasted long and everyone had returned to their daily activities. Go, seeing the monsters approaching, shouted that only their guild was present, so everyone else should evacuate quickly. A humanoid monster with sharp teeth and a horn let out a loud roar. Dayan, with a calm expression, told Go to act, and he accepted the order with a worried look on his face. Two monsters attacked Goho, but they failed to injure him due to his petrification ability. Dayan thought that his daily routine consisted of eating 5 mana-rich meals and training hard. He added that when the request to eliminate the monsters came up, Goho was the first to take action. He observed how Tang endured the blows and thought that his growth rate exceeded expectations. With luck, he would play a significant role during the first disaster. Dayan asked Lily if she was ready and then told her she had 1 minute. The girl nodded and formed 2 fire beams above her palms. She shouted at her enemies that she would turn them into French fries and then launched several fireballs forward. Lily turned to Dayan, saying that everything was ready and asked him to buy her a monster burger meal. Dayan checked his watch and told her she was 5 seconds late, so he would interrupt with something. Lily, with a desperate expression, fell to her knees and exclaimed that this couldn't be happening. Goho, with dark green energy emanating behind him, asked Dayan if he could join him for dinner today, wearing a cheerful expression. Dayan rushed to the tank, placed his hand on Goho's shoulder, and attacked a monster behind him with a dagger. He said it was a shadow goblin waiting in the darkness to strike. A drop of sweat rolled down Goho's cheek. Dayan, with a stern look, asked what kind of dinner he was talking about and said that he needed to be prepared. Goho apologized to Dayan with a sad expression and added that today he would eat something nutritious and do extra exercise. Dayan averted his gaze. To the side, he thought that this guy had a good attitude, then told him to keep up the same spirit. He pulled out a dagger wrapped in blue energy and thought that his abilities had reached the level he had in his previous life. Turning his head, he considered that shadow goblins were no longer a problem for him and that his mana reserves had also increased. He added that if he kept up this momentum, he would become even stronger. A rainbow appeared against the backdrop of a cloudy sky. Lily looked at the rainbow and noticed that it was missing the color red. Dayan wondered if it would disappear in 2 weeks. Dayan thought that to survive the night of the 7 moons, he would need to prepare several things. He envisioned warriors charging toward many monsters and considered that he would need firepower to eliminate them quickly as they emerged from the gate, as well as a special command to destroy the gate's core. Dayan imagined numerous documents falling to the ground and thought that he needed a plan to minimize the city's destruction. He pictured a liquid pouring into his hand from a jar and reflected that restoring superhumans' physical strength and healing their wounds was also crucial. He added that he had already taken care of that part, and what remained was to prepare for everything else. Yuni asked Dayan if she could report on the status of potion sales. She walked alongside Dayan and Lily, stating that she had been informed that sales would begin this week. Dayan, holding a document, told Yuni to continue monitoring the sales and added that any issues should be reported to him immediately. With a stern look, Dayan asked the girl if the conditions for sale had been approved. Yuvi, smiling, replied that it no longer mattered because even without her advertisement, superhumans would line up for it. She added that in the report, she had indicated the prices for each portion. Dayan read that the portion per person was fixed and the price price was high. Yuni slightly turned and asked Daein if she had managed to please him. Daein asked about Young Shin's progress and added that he had heard that the golem was already capable of movement. She recalled how a boy with a screwdriver in hand repaired the guardian and said that no one else could have done it, but he insisted that he could. Daein approached his car where the driver had opened the door for him and told the girl that she needed to trust him. He added that that was all. A crack appeared in the white void. Mentally, Daein wondered why he was certain he would succeed. He answered himself saying that everything was for the opportunity to go to the zoo with Lily. He smirked maliciously as he remembered Young Shin blushing. He looked at the document, which listed the names Yi Sik, San Jun, and Li Yun, and thought that this document contained the names of his friends who had been at his retirement party. Daein thought that since his intervention had changed the future, there was no guarantee they would meet again. He folded the document under his shirt and said he would take it for himself. Yuni, smiling, asked Daein if he needed anything else, then mentioned that she would like to work with him a bit more before taking a week off. Daein asked the driver how long it would take to reach the workplace. The driver responded that it would take about an hour. Daein remarked that it was quite far and difficult for him. The driver, with his eyes closed, replied that it was fine. Daein asked the driver if he would like to move into an apartment next to the guild headquarters. The driver, alarmed by Daein's words, asked Yuni to prepare the driver's apartment as soon as possible. He added that even if there were enough rooms for the driver's entire family, he would cover the costs. Yuni closed her eyes and replied that she understood everything. She turned her head slightly and thought that Daein was a very strange person. The driver looked at Daein through the rearview mirror and asked what he was saying. Daein, smiling, told the driver that it would be more convenient for him. He added that he had plenty of money, so the driver shouldn't refuse. The driver laughed and then wondered if he was dreaming or if it was his birthday. Daein turned his head toward the window and thought that with potions, money was not an issue, but it wasn't possible to evacuate all loved ones that way. With a serious expression, he thought that he still had a lot of work to do. Benjae wished Daein and Lily a safe trip with a happy expression. Daein asked him to take care of the house in her absence. Lily told Moonjae that he wouldn't be able to escape. The black-haired guy agreed with her, smiling. Lily looked somewhere with a surprised expression. Goho was standing in front of a rock with a large dent in it. Daein placed his index finger to his lips and told the girl to stay quiet. He added that they should move on since Goho was focused, and the girl responded, "That's good." Tank placed his hands on the rock and said he was too slow, which wasn't good. With a frustrated expression, he said that if he didn't get stronger, the commander would kick him out. Daein, with a concerned expression, wondered if Goho was still worried about being expelled. He added that whatever his motivation, it was good that he was getting stronger, so he wouldn't interfere. Lily said they would fly further and that she would create a shield. Daein and the girl were flying on the shield. Yuni asked Lily, "Since you can do this?" The girl, surprised, told Daein that she had only tried it and it worked. Then she asked if he really couldn't do the same. Daein cursed Lily mentally. He looked at the CR on the stone wall and thought that this was his personal treasure. He added that he had collected things he found in the Forbidden Territory. A cheerful fairy with a bob haircut greeted Lily, and Lily touched her with a finger and greeted her back. A long-haired fairy saluted Daein and reported that there was nothing to report, nothing had happened. Daein, with a serious expression, responded that this was good, then ordered her to patrol near the cave. 3 fairies winked at Daein and said they would protect their friend's property. Daein thought that they had drunk the elixir of life and had become as fast as bullets. He added that he used their powers for this so they could contact him quickly in case of an invasion. There were boxes and shelves filled with various things in the room. Lily asked Daein why they were there, and Daein told her to wait. Daein imagined a mask with a woman's lips and thought that the charlatan's mask made a person attractive and charming, while also altering their voice to sound like an orator. He imagined a green cloak and thought that it was a sage's cloak, which emitted a difficult-to-handle aura when infused with mana. He imagined a staff with a blue stone at its top and thought that it glowed when mana was injected into it. Daein's hair turned brown from wearing the green cloak. He said it looked very plausible. Lily put on the mask, and after that, she was wearing a purple hood and a cape. Her hair turned golden. She exclaimed that her voice had changed and sounded strange. Daein declared that the preparations were complete and that the operation could begin. The full moon stood in the middle of the night sky. People fought against monsters emerging from the portal. Daein stepped out of the portal after the monsters. He used the reveal invisibility ability, making both himself and Lily visible. One of the warriors shouted, asking who they were. Another warrior yelled, wondering if he had just come out of the gate. In front of Daein, holding a staff, stood many fighters with weapons at the ready. Daein, with a small smile, thought that it was good to have many witnesses. He removed his hood and told the people in front of him that he was Amos the mage from the continent of Guy. With a crazed look, he declared that he had come to warn them that a disaster would soon befall their lands. A rainbow rose in the sky. Another fighter asked in what language Daein was speaking, adding that he had never heard it before. The 2 men looked at each other with concern on their faces, and one of them asked the other if both of them had come out of the gate. The stone on Daein's staff began to glow intensely with a blue light. A man dressed in red and black covered his face, while another man with a shield asked what it was. Dayan, with a serious expression, told the people in front of him not to worry, as he would use translation magic. He asked for permission to introduce himself again and stated that he was Amos, the mage from the continent of Guy. He looked at Lily and told her to listen to him carefully. The girl took it as a sign and used her shield ability. Dayan and Lily rose into the air on the shield, after which Dayan extended his hand holding the staff and shouted to the people below that he had come to warn them. The blonde-haired young man remarked that Dayan was truly a mage. The long-haired man asked Dayan what he wanted to warn them about. A rainbow rose in the sky and Dayan said it was a sign of a curse. He extended his left hand and declared that when everyone disappeared, a disaster would fall upon their lands, opening thousands of gates to hell. Lily realized that this was another sign. Many portals appeared above them and Dayan shouted that monsters and demons would flood both earth and heaven. He added that the living would close their eyes and the dead would rise. He told the people that they had to unite and prepare for the coming disaster. A wide-eyed officer asked how they were supposed to interpret this. Dayan thought that he had successfully diverted their attention. He and Lily landed on the ground. One of the guild members noted that it was strange how the colors in the rainbow were disappearing. Dayan thought that the special mask made his voice more impressive and the sage's cloak emitted an aura that drew people's attention. He added that the staff simply emitted light and helped make a strong impression. The officer extended his right hand and asked Dayan how they could prevent this disaster. Dayan closed his eyes and looked down before replying that there was no way to prevent it, only to minimize the damage. He opened his eyes and asked the people in front of him who the king of the world was, stating that he would then share all the details. In the interrogation room of the Blue House, a man with glasses opened the door and entered the room where Lily and Dayan were seated at a table. The man with glasses placed a magazine on the table and stated that he had never met anyone like him, the head of the superhuman support team of SanW. Dayan, with a confident expression, told the chief that he understood his surprise, but he had only come to warn him about the danger. He stated that he assumed the man was not the king and then requested to be escorted to the king immediately. SanW, with a serious expression, asked Dayan why he was so sure that he was not the king. He added that perhaps their cultures were different, and that was why he did not resemble the king of their world. Dayan gestured with his palm and asked Sanwuk if his words were hard to believe. He added that he could read destinies, though not very skillfully. The man with glasses placed a hand on his head and sighed. Dayan asked his interlocutor if he really had no idea how and stated that he could see a glimpse of how events would unfold, leaving a mark on history and the fate of great people. A blue energy emanated from Dayan, and he told Sanwuk that, for example, he was not a king now, but in the near future, he would strive to become one. SanW, with a worried expression, shouted and asked how Dayan had discovered that. Dayan thought that he had seen his candidacy for the presidency in the future, and that he was also a judge of superhumans who did not tolerate them committing crimes. A shadow covered Dayan's face, and he said that he could not say more, as that was all he could see. A black-haired man wearing a white shirt opened the door and told Sanwuk that the president had requested to meet the mage personally. The chief turned to him and replied that he understood everything. Sanwuk informed Amos that he would accompany him to the king. Dayan agreed and with a smile on his face extended his staff, which was then taken from his hands. He thought that the current Blue House had been rebuilt a few years ago. He imagined a gate emitting pink energy and thought that the first gate had opened right on its roof from which a monster had emerged. He imagined a red dragon opening its mouth and spewing flames and thought that in the end the president and most of the parliament members there had died, and the election of a new president had only slightly alleviated the resulting chaos. Dayan looked around and thought that the Blue House was now solid and resembled a military building. Sanwuk stopped and told Dad, and that they had arrived. In the president's office, many guards stood in the way of the president, who was seated at his desk. The president, with gray hair and glasses, moved his hand to the side and greeted Dayan. Then he informed him that he was the president of this country and asked Dad and if he truly came from another dimension. A man wearing a gray mask stood beside the president. Dayan bowed and replied that yes, he was Amos, a mage from the continent of Guy. He added that he hoped the president would forgive his assistant's imperfect translation magic. Lily also bowed to the president and exclaimed that she was happy to meet him. The president replied that it was fine and that they could sit down. Dayan took a closer look at the chair and remarked that it was unusual. The president told him that it was a chair designed to detect lies and explained that if he lied, they would know immediately. Dayan, smiling, told the president what he thought, that it would be good if he sat in one of those himself. The president asked Dayan to repeat his words. Dayan responded that he was saying they had nothing to hide. Dayan sat in the chair and declared that he was ready to answer. The president asked the guest if he had really come from the continent of Guy. Dayan and Lily both answered yes. The president asked the guests if their story about the disaster was true. Dayan, with a serious expression, confirmed that it was true and that they had come to warn them, but his assistant truly knew nothing about it. The president asked the guests to tell him what they knew. Dayan began telling the story while Lily admitted that she knew nothing. The girl lowered her head and Dayan thought that the little girl hadn't understood even half of the questions. He added that he had trained in martial arts and could control his breathing, pulse, and sweat, so the lie detector would not work on him. The fighters asked who he really was. The president rises from his seat and asks his subordinates to remove the devices from Dayan. After that, the sensors are removed from him, and the president, along with his subordinates, leaves the room. Dayan sighs, and the trembling Lily raises her hands in the air. A man with glasses approaches Dayan and apologizes for doubting him, adding that the situation is now in their favor. Dayan responds that he understands everything because he would have done the same. A shadow covers the president's face, and then he tells Dayan that he will ask a personal question. He asks Dayan if he can help him fly to his continent before the disaster happens. Dayan opens his eyes, surprised. The president, with a smile on his face, asks Dayan if it is safer there and says that since he came from there to warn them, it's quite likely. Dayan, with a shocked expression, asks the president how he, being a king, could want to abandon his people and flee. The president, with an alarmed expression, shouts that he is not a king and says that it simply happened that his position was given to him. He adds that if they need money or anything else, they will have it. He moves one arm to the side and presses the other against his chest, shouting that he is tired of this dangerous world where you never know when you will die. He only asks to be taken away along with his family and friends. Dayan thinks that he did not expect this. He takes Lily's hand and shouts to her that he had a different opinion about them, so they were leaving now. The president shouts at the departing guests, saying that they themselves said they would help. Dayan responds to the gray-haired man that he will never know what is in his soul. He adds that he needs nothing and rejects his offer. The president says that this is not necessary, but that there is no other choice. His bodyguard removes his mask, and a gray-haired man with a mustache and beard crushes the mask until it breaks. It is the first awakened Titan, Kim Suo. He approaches Dayan, and his phantom clones remain behind. He towers over Dayan and is enveloped by a massive amount of green energy. Dayan trembles, thinking that he cannot look into his eyes. He laughs, and Suo asks why he is laughing. Dayan asks him how long he intends to continue this game and calls him the real king. Suo's face shows concern, and he asks Dayan how he discovered it. Dayan closes his eyes and replies that he noticed his enormous phase star behind him. The first awakened Titan has a bright green star. Dayan thinks that Suo was the hero who brought order to South Korea after the first gate opened. Dayan imagines the South Korean flag waving against the cloudy sky and believes that upon awakening his powers, Suo mobilized the police force to protect the city's population. After the presidential elections, he rebuilt the Blue House and began governing the country. Suo dedicated himself to cleaning the city and rebuilding the nation. All South Koreans know the headquarters of the Disaster Response Center. Suo extends his hand toward Dayan, who was with Lily, and tells the people in front of him that before starting the meeting, he would like to introduce the mage who brought the prophecy. Dayan introduces himself as Amos and hopes that everyone will listen to him carefully. Then he reveals everything about the rainbow. With a serene expression, Dayan states that this is all that is dangerous about the disaster. He thinks that all the important authorities are gathered there. Shansong clenches his fist and shouts that among these 10,000 monsters, there will probably be some very strong ones, such as the monster Baek Chung, the demon King Kim, among others. Eugene listens attentively to Dayan's speech with a suspicious look. The girl with white hair and blue eyes is known as the Ice Queen, Hani Hai. The brown-haired man with eyes of the same color is known as the Iron Wall of Men, Mei One. Dayan thinks that these are the first awakened people, or more precisely, the 5 strongest among the first to awaken. He adds that they helped destroy the monsters and stabilize the situation, just like Suo. With a discreet smile, Suo says that he plans to declare a state of emergency tomorrow morning and will do his best to prepare for the disaster. He asks for the help of everyone present. Eugene, with a serious expression, asks the president to wait and then questions how he could believe in such an unreal story. Yuan places his hand on his palm and closes his eyes, saying that he agrees because the mage seems like a fraud. Another person comments that declaring a state of emergency without proof is a hasty decision. Someone asks if there is any evidence. Suo raises his hand, asks for silence, and states that he has already verified everything. He recalls the opening of the first gate with burning buildings and says that if everything goes well, they can handle the situation without major problems, which would also be positive. However, he warns that they will suffer great losses if they do not prepare for the disaster. Yuan, who had been silent, seems to want to talk about what he has been doing, but suddenly stops. He quickly gets up and runs forward, assuming a combat stance, questioning whether this is an attack. Yuan shouts for him to take off the mask. Yuan grabs Lily with one hand and with the other removes her mask, saying that the mask was bothering him, so she should stay still while he takes it off. The mask falls to the ground. Lily emits smoke as she transforms. Yuan looks at his hand while Chansong makes a shocked expression. Furious, Lily transforms into a cat and meows loudly. Someone at the table asks if she really wasn't human. Dayan picks up the mask from the ground, places it on the cat, and tells Lily to calm down, explaining that the man knew nothing and was wrong. Angrily, he states that showing her face is a disgrace for the representative of the cats, which is why she always wears the mask when they travel together. With a cautious look, Daein thinks that if something like this happened, he had already coordinated his actions with Lily. He remembers how she, with her golden hair, looked at the mask with interest and thought that, besides changing the voice, there was a spell that transformed whoever wore it into a cat. If the mask was removed, the spell would break. Mentally, Daein tells himself he was wrong and wonders what to do now. Sumo, with a dark aura surrounding him, demands that he apologize immediately. The golden cat in Daein's hands meows loudly. The brown-haired man apologizes for removing the mask without permission. Daein, with a nervous smile on his face, thinks that the girl has already perfectly adapted to the role of a cat since she meowed several times in a row. The next day, Sugo declares a state of emergency through radio and television broadcasts. He stands behind the podium, informing citizens about the crisis hitting South Korea. There is some commotion after the announcement, but everyone soon adapts. Helicopters fly over the sky, and tanks and armored vehicles move across the ground. The military police and superhuman guilds begin large-scale military training. A brown-haired man approaches Daein and, calling him a great sage, says he heard he would be leaving that day. Daein, sitting at the table with Lily, responds that he really will be leaving since the interdimensional movement spell is nearly ending. He adds that he will need to return in a few hours. The man asks if he can request a small favor before his departure. Daein, smiling, replies that he will do everything within his power. The man then hands him some books obtained during the country's restoration. Daein looks at the many shelves filled with books. The man explains that he selected only those in good condition and asks Daein to take a look at them. Since time is short, he suggests that Daein focus only on the most important ones. Daein gets up from his chair and says that his knowledge is limited, so the man should not expect much. He thinks that the man sees him more as a slave than as a great sage. The man thanks him, and as Daein walks among the shelves, he reflects that besides spoken languages, he is well versed in the writings of the continent and the Myron language. He also thinks that his knowledge is mainly focused on magic and martial arts. He focuses on a book titled Secret Records of the Sword Emperor, opening it with surprise as he reads that the author, Nam Gung Yul, introduces himself as the Sword Emperor. He thinks that this really is the Myron language and wonders what will come next. The brown-haired man asks Daein if something is wrong with the book. Daein closes the book and thinks that he is not sure if it is the original, so he needs to examine it more carefully. With a strange expression, Daein says that the book seems to have been written by the devil himself. The brown-haired man asks if that is true. Daein asks if there were other objects at the location where the book was found. Daein suggests that it could be a sword or something similar, adding that it contains demonic energy, controlling whoever holds it and causing harm to those nearby. The interlocutor turns on his smartphone and exclaims that he will check immediately. Daein thinks that it would be ideal if they could also find the celestial divine sword that the Sword Emperor used. The brown-haired man tells Daein that he was informed that no sword was found, only the worn clothes and the book in the destroyed cave. Daein closes his eyes and smiles, saying he is happy to hear that, but mentally curses him. Daein places the book under his cloak and says that the book is very dangerous, so he will take it with him and seal it. He adds that their king is very busy and that the interlocutor should not report anything. The interlocutor responds that he will do so. Daein begins reading the lines of a book where the author writes that he was born as an illegitimate son of the Namban family. The author writes that although heaven gave him a talent for martial arts, he was constantly discriminated against for his origins. He adds that he could not even observe the development of martial arts in the noble Namban family, and after his mother's death, stole all the family's martial arts records and elixirs. Daein is reading the book with a concentrated expression and thinks that the introduction is not interesting to him, and the last part is something he already knows. He adds that the Sword Emperor, who had become a high-class master, fought against the celestial demon, and after a narrow victory, disappeared. Lily asks Daein what he is doing and says she is bored. Daein tells her to play alone for a while. If she is really bored, she might as well read. Irritated, Lily runs away from Daein. Daein shouts to the girl that if she is going for a walk, she should return for dinner. He thinks that now he can spend some time in silence and solitude. Daein reads that due to an invasion of a demonic cult, a great war with a celestial demon broke out in the central plane. It is also written that the Sword Emperor had no choice but to intervene to stop him. The difference between them was small, almost imperceptible. If he had been born a legitimate son of the Namban family, he would have mastered perfect martial arts a little earlier. Only after many years of atrocities by the celestial demon did he return to the central lands. If he had returned without an arm or a leg, he would have been called a loser and ridiculed. Daein, with a worried expression, thinks that this man is saying too much. With dissatisfaction on his face, he asks why there is so much written about the heaven-destroying mental technique. Daein flips through the pages and reads when the book's author addresses the reader, asking if they want to learn the world's greatest martial arts. It is written that if the answer is yes, then the reader should bow. The author swears that he considers them his disciple after that. It is written that the author eventually defeated the celestial demon with the so-called heaven-destroying mental technique. Daein sits on the floor and places the book there. Then he says he will try once. Sitting in a butterfly position, he forms an orange ball between his hands, with the blue energy full of sparks circling around it. Dayan closes his eyes and thinks that there are 3 main levels of meditation. A stream of smoke moves to the right. Dayan thinks about accumulation, referring to the amount of internal energy stored in the Danon. A stream of smoke moves to the left, and Dayan thinks about stability, referring to the stability of energy in the body. Suddenly, he hears a noise and turns around. He opens the window and sees a portal in the sky. He shouts that he sees a portal and that monsters will appear from it. He sees a minotaur emerging from the portal. Hey everyone, did you enjoy this story? I really liked it. If you want to follow the next part, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. See you in the next story, guys.